Hey guys, Pete here. It's time to talk about episode 9 of Better Call Saul's final season, which for me right now is my favorite episode of the series. Definitely my favorite episode of the season, slightly edging out 607. But I mean, right now, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since it came out. And every time I do, I just think about something else that was just kind of perfect in it. And it was just a fantastic episode of television, and I have invited a couple of my friends here to talk about it today. I'll be introducing them in a second. I do want to let you guys know that we have. I've been thinking about this for a while, and this week we're going to try it out for the first time. I'm going to do a preview stream on Saturday, and so we're going to have this week at least. We're going to have Courtney and Chase, the Vivid Kiwi, because neither one of them can make to make this one today. So we'll have two different ones, and we'll see how that goes, and maybe we'll do that for the rest of the way. The rest of the way till the end. So the episode was titled "Fun and Games." It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt or loses an eye or the relationship comes to an end. I'm going to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves, and then you could tell me your overall thoughts on the episode, where it landed for you, how it felt, what you thought about it, what you hope to see next. And then we'll circle back around and I'll talk about that. And then we'll answer questions from everybody that's got them. So, Gil, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Gil from the One Take YouTube channel, where we talk about Better Call Saul and a bunch of other shows. And we do Saulcast on that channel and on its own podcast stream. So thanks, Pete, again for having me on this week. I echo your sentiments. I'm not necessarily ready to say my favorite episode of the entire series. It's just too hard to pick one out, and there's always that recency bias. But I did love the episode, and I knew I loved it as I was watching it. And then I tried to figure out what about it struck such a chord. And I think there are a couple of things. One, it's just hard to ignore the fact that, of course, the transformation of Jimmy McGill into Saul Goodman is a complicated one. And you don't have that moment that gets memed so often of this was the moment he was truly Saul Goodman, or this was the moment he was truly Heisenberg. But if we ever were going to have that moment, we kind of had it here. We had that time jump or flash forward that says essentially, and then he became Saul Goodman, ... And I thought they stuck the landing with that moment so well. The context of it, choosing to put it right after the breakup with Kim, I thought was perfect, memorable, and sort of a landmark moment that I think people will talk about long after the series is done. Great song choice for the introduction there, too, I thought. And then just overall, this episode, I think we love Better Call Saul because it's so focused on character and it's so focused on characters' choices. And we know a lot of the choices they're going to make because we know where Mike, Gus, and Jimmy end up in Breaking Bad. But I thought this episode gave so much context to those choices. It showed us the cost of those choices. You look at Gus and see what he's giving up in favor of a life focused on revenge. It helps us to understand kind of the reality of Mike's choice. We understand more why Jimmy ends up where he did. So I loved the focus on choice. And in a lot of the ways, this episode almost felt finale-like. It felt like goodbyes to Gus and Mike, even though we might see them again. But overall, to me, it's felt like we're watching a several-part finale, and this really gave me that feeling. But the fun thing is there's still 4 episodes left, so there's still more story to tell.
Yeah, we're on the same page about the way that the time jump worked. And whenever you were talking about that moment, that's the same thing I opened my recap video up with, was that idea that that's been the thing that people have made fun of anybody who suggested the idea that this is the moment where he becomes Saul Goodman, and for good reason in some ways. You know what I mean? It is something that happens as a process. But I wonder if it's kind of a wink and a nod, if that had something to do with their decision to do it. I mean, it makes perfect sense, when you see it, that abrupt change where he's just, how else could you do it? It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, you know what I mean? You just have to do it. And the idea that he's on this turntable bed, maybe, that we'll talk about later, because I don't know that I fully understand what the function of that is. But I mean, it was all the different ways you would think it might happen, because you knew it was going to happen, like you said. And then, they still have that ability to surprise us with things that are inevitable. So it's pretty crazy. All right, Jim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Jim from the Bald Move Network. We do a lot of podcasts on different TV shows. Our Better Call Saul podcast is called Better Cast Saul, which I do with my co-host Aaron over there. And we've been covering Breaking Bad since season 3 all the way through Better Call Saul now. So a lot of history under the belt. And man, this is an excellent episode. This would be an excellent episode of Breaking Bad. It's an excellent episode of Better Call Saul. The thing I particularly love about it is the way that they took Kim from, the person that we've known for so long into her final form here, and how it felt like inevitable and yet surprising at the same time. Because I've always wondered, like, what is going to be the thing that pushes Kim over the edge, makes her leave, or is she going to get killed, or what, or how are they going to thread this needle? And to have it be her decision, because they're so bad together, but well, they're so good together, which makes them so bad for everybody else. It's like a sacrifice, right? It's she's giving up someone she loves because she knows that it's bad for everyone else around her, and that feels so Kim to me. She wants to protect people, right? She wants to help people, and so I was just truly blown away by that scene. Like, this is the Emmy scene. This is the scene they submit to have just win all the awards, because both
for her second Emmy, because this one will be the next year, right? So this will be for her back-to-back Emmy whenever that comes around.
Hopefully, yeah. No, she's fantastic. I've never seen Bob Odenkirk quite this way before. He's usually the smooth talker, the guy who's going to play the fool. This scene is so honest, it's so real, and I don't know that I've ever seen that from Bob Odenkirk before. So it was very surprising and very rewarding to see.
Yeah, like I said, going into this, I was at a point where I didn't like any of the options anymore. They kind of narrowed things down as different, things, different storylines wrapped up. At a time, going to prison seemed like it might make sense. The vacuum cleaner guy seemed like it might make sense a little bit during this season. There was all these, obviously dying. I never really thought that would be a great way to go. And we really did hit a point where it was just like, none of these are going to be satisfying, because none of them are really about Kim and what she does. You know what I mean? They're all like, something has to happen to Kim. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really remarkable that they were able to come up with a way where, like you said, that, it's her decision. She chooses this, and because she believes it's the only way forward. And it's brutal, because in that scene she kind of takes the responsibility on herself, like where she says, this is I did this because it was so much fun. And it's sort of like letting him off the hook, or trying to, and taking it on for herself. And I feel like for him, he's kind of in a place where he's just shell shocked. You know what I mean? Like, the worst thing that he ever heard was just, he's just sitting with it. Whatever's going on with her, it's almost like he can't even understand it or process it. Like you said, I think Bob did a great job of that here, of like showing that this guy is nearly catatonic. And what his wife is doing is she's like, there's a lot of, we really don't know what's going to happen to her afterwards, but she's not setting herself up to break away so that she can have this wonderful life that she's being deprived of. It's kind of dark when you really think about it.
Yeah, that's what I loved. I came into this season wanting something beyond the pale to happen with Howard. I got that. And then I get this excellent scene that I didn't know I wanted, but it was exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. So another thing that you mentioned, Gil, was the idea of choices, and that was a big thing that stood out for me too. I thought they set this up pretty well in the end of the last episode with putting Howard and Lalo burying them next to each other, because that gave the time for Mike to show us, to remind us, that, hey, I'm a little bit different than everybody else because I have, this code, and I really feel bad about this because this guy wasn't in the game and whatnot. And then they brought it back around in this episode to have him do what he thinks is right at the moment, which is go and give Manuel Varga peace about, this situation that happened to his son. There's the obvious parallel there. They both lost a son. Mike believes that they're both good men at their core and that he'll understand this. And then when he goes to the idea of justice, it's really fascinating because Manuel Papa Varga, he tells him something that he knows inside probably, but he can't really see or accept. And that's that, there is no justice in what he's doing. He's just finding a way to continue doing what he feels like he has to do and have it make sense. And at the end of the day, he's not really that much different than the people he's in. And what I loved about both of those scenes together was it just shows you that there's really no escape from this life. You know what I mean? This life causes huge amounts of problems for everyone close to these people. And so to see Mike sort of make it, sort of understand that in this conversation, that he's kind of he's kind of full of it, but then still continue on throughout the entirety of Breaking Bad, it really does change the way you think about his character going forward.
Yeah, they love to do these great visual moments that act as sort of metaphors for what's going on. And there's one moment in this episode that really struck me in the scene you're talking about where Mike is speaking to Manuel. Right after Manuel says, you're not talking about justice, you're talking about revenge. Right after he says the word revenge, it cuts to a side shot where Mike is behind a fence and Manuel is just in the foreground of the camera. So it appears like Mike is in a prison while Manuel is free. And that to me is the visual metaphor for exactly what you're saying, that Mike he calls him, you're just a gangster essentially. And I think Mike to some extent realizes that's true. I can keep telling myself I'm a good person inside, but I'm living this awful life. I'm part of a system that hurts people. And he essentially stays trapped in that into Breaking Bad. And we see where it leads.
Yeah, the thing I kept thinking of in that scene is the line "sangre por sangre," because that's essentially what Mike's doing here, right? That there's going to be more killing, and if you go all the way back to the beginning, it's all about Max. So you can see where all this starts with a killing, and then the blood just keeps spilling.
And we know that Gus's thirst for revenge, which puts him in the room with Hector, is what ends up blowing off half his face and killing him. So we don't have to wonder if Manuel's right. We know he is.
Yeah. And I think, the tragedy of it is that these characters know that too. They fight against it, just like you do with anything that you don't like about yourself. You know what I mean? But because you have this place you're trying to get. I mean, Gus is I don't know if it's more understandable, but it's more in your face, like they killed my lover, and now I'm going to dedicate my life to taking them all out, getting my revenge. It's wild. And like you said, this scene with to know these characters for as long as we have, and then to get these little scenes where they actually make them, they actually add another layer, it's pretty amazing. You know what I mean? Like the Gus scene, I mean, I never really thought it was a question of whether he was gay or not, or Max was his partner. I know they played coy with it, but to me, it seemed pretty, self-evident that he wouldn't be doing all he was doing if there wasn't something more in that relationship. You know what I mean? And, to think that they could do this and then just spin it a little bit to show that he's, he won't even give himself anything like this obvious setup for him to, to find romance right here. Like obviously he's turned on, they hit it off, it's all going in the right direction, and then he pulls back at the very end because it's just not something that he'll allow himself to experience in pursuit of that goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that scene was so striking. It's just so unusual to see Gus legitimately smiling and not the fake Los Pollos Hermanos smile.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is like the first time we've ever seen that in all of the years that we've watched this character.
Yeah, and I think it's so apropos right now towards the end of the series to just remind us that Gus's story is also a tragedy. He's the guy who's in charge, and he is getting what he wants, right? He's going after revenge, and he does get it, but ends up taking his own life. But here they show us that he is still capable of feeling something. He is still capable of having a human connection with somebody, that he's making the choice to walk away from it. And like I was just saying before, it's so rare, maybe more than rare, to see him genuinely smile, and also to sort of give himself up to somebody else, to watch him almost held captive by this person's story, and he's just smiling and listening. Once again, it's seeing him not in charge. It's this whole other side to him. It's impossible to look away. And then it's so sad when his expression kind of drops and he sort of decides, all right, back to work.
All right. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to get into, but we do have a few super chats here, so let's go ahead and look at those. This first one I've been looking at for a second, and I'm not really sure how to respond to it. Thank you for the $4.99. Do you think Saul's IBS will pop up later this season? Like maybe he releases a massive fart in the middle of a big case and blows it as a result. I don't know about that specifically, but
Big cliffhanger moment, right?
yeah, but what I'm really wondering at the end of this last episode is I mean, obviously some of it's going to be in the Gene timeline, and some of it's going to be, Walt and Jesse's return. But there's a lot of time that they could be spending in the Better Call Saul timeline based on what they have to work with, and it's kind of hard to figure out what might transpire there. Do you guys have any ideas?
Well, just one
or anything IBS related?
We could circle back to that, but one just like clarifying point. Am I right that we're still, even after that flash forward, about 3 years out from Breaking Bad, just based off the 2005 license plate?
Yeah, that's the best information I saw on it. When I was doing my video yesterday, I couldn't find anything more concrete than that, and I just sort of avoided it in the recap. But I looked online this morning for a second, and it seems to be the consensus that it's 2005-ish.
Gotcha.
The hair kind of throws me off, but I mean, I guess that's what it is,
Yeah, I guess it's such a strange. It's so hard to speculate because it feels like at this point something new has to happen, something we don't know about, unless there's another flash forward in the next episode, and now we're in 2008 and we see Walt and Jesse. So it feels like there's got to be some story here that is just something that's almost unpredictable because it involves a new story that doesn't necessarily have threads in what we've already seen. I saw somebody mention it. It feels like a lot of the stories are wrapped up at this point, and it does feel that way to me, which is part of why it's so exciting that we're entering this fresh territory where it almost feels like anything could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Mike and Gus stuff, it totally felt like the conclusion of their story. You know what I mean? In this timeline, and I don't really, unless there's a good reason for them to come back, I don't think we really need to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's weird because if he's in 2005 and at this point, then there is quite a bit of time that they have, to work with before they even get to when Walt and Jesse would make sense in 2008.
Right. As I've always thought, up until this season, I've always thought, hey, maybe we get some kind of montage that brings us through gets us to the Breaking Bad timeline. But at this point, it's hard for me to make a case for why that'd be necessary, because really, the only way I could see that being useful is because it kind of shows us Saul Goodman's life. We get sort of a flavor of his status quo until Walt and Jesse show up. But between the cold open of this season, giving us a preview of this opulent lifestyle, and then even just the 2 or 3 minutes we got at the end of last episode, this one we're talking about right now, I felt like that did such a great job of showing us who he is, which is basically Jimmy McGill's been totally buried underneath this Saul Goodman persona. Someone pointed out to me that even when he's taking a shower, he's already got the Bluetooth headset in, almost like he is just drowning out any possible moment of private thought. He is just on Saul Goodman all the time. And to me, that almost told me everything I need to know about who Saul Goodman is. So, yeah, I guess this is a long way of saying I'm not sure what story they have to tell before Walt and Jesse show up. I'm sure there's something. I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I guess I would like a little bit more information about the struggle he's gone through with Kim leaving. Just a slight bit, but like you said, that scene does a lot of heavy lifting. You know, it's not about that, but in some ways, it is all about that. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to see it.
Yeah, I mean, because I haven't had a chance to look at all the comments on my video, but I was scrolling through them a little bit earlier, and I did see that a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is a terrible idea that we've been waiting all this time to see the transition to Saul, and now they just did it in a heartbeat," you know? And I mean, I don't agree with the point, because I think if you really think about it, they did explain so much about it, you know, not even verbally, you know, like it just in the way that it was crafted, and the way that, you know, the things that they chose to show us. And you know, I mean, you do kind of have to think a little bit about the episode 1 teaser, where you just saw him, you know, his empty mansion or whatever. But there's it for me, it totally clicks. And this next question kind of feeds into that. James Egan says, thank you for the Australian $7.99. Do you think Saul is now comfortable suggesting sending people on a trip to Belize by the end of this episode? And I think what you're saying, you know, what you guys are saying there is that I don't know if he ever is comfortable beyond the fact that he's just saying what makes sense. And he's really just, this is all just so that he doesn't have to live with the reality of, you know, what his life has become, what it is after Kim left, and what that means. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Can he, does he seem like he's comfortable suggesting to send someone to Belize, which is a big question and a lot of people had for years because of that line in Breaking Bad?
I think he's comfortable doing just about anything. I see a man who doesn't really want to live any kind of life, but he's got a life to live, and so he's just out there like doing everything he can to take his mind off the thing that's really annoying him. Like the thing you said that's so interesting here is how non-verbally they just communicate what's going on inside his head. Like if you look at his routine, it's morning to night. If he is not passed out in that possibly rotating bed, he is doing something to distract himself, right? He's got a prostitute that he's hired to keep him company in the evening, all the way through the morning breakfast until he's on the phone with clients or other lawyers or Francesca. He's then opening the halls of justice and taking in client after client after client. There is no break in his day to even think about what he's lost.
Yeah, and just to interject for a second, I was just, before I forget, the fact that he has a giant bowl of Nutrigrain bars on the table that he calls the breakfast bar. I mean, this is an everyday occurrence for him, you know,
every single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do such a great job with that. So yeah, I think this is a man who doesn't really care whether he lives or dies at this point. And yeah, sending somebody to Belize is just a tool for him, right?
Yeah, it's God, and it, you know, whenever you think about it, he was introduced as a funny, I always thought of Saul Goodman as sort of a shade of a comic relief character, to lighten the mood because he was wacky. Never again will I watch that show, rewatch Breaking Bad and be able to think about him in that way.
Yeah, it's just sad now. Like
It
it
really
almost
is.
this opening scene, or not opening scene, the end of the episode of watching Saul go about his day, it feels so over the top in a sense, like almost overacting. But and part of that's just because we're so used to seeing the kind of Saul Goodman prototype, where it's a little bit lower key. But I think that's intentional, where Jimmy is putting on a show, and now that we know who he really is underneath, it starts to come off as sort of superficial, hollow, and, to say the word again, just sad.
Yeah, that word "sad" was kicking around in my head for all of them yesterday. Kim, man, that's so sad. Gus, he's still a garbage human being, psychopath, but what a sad story they put there. Mike, sad. It was the saddest of episodes. It does make me wonder. I mean, there almost has to be some sort of redemption. They sort of have to bring this out of this, because I don't really see him ending on this type of a note for the finale of both series together. Is that in the end it was all really, really sad.
Yeah, it's been almost oppressively dark the last couple of episodes. Like what was the name of Point and Shoot ended with us burying Lalo and Howard's bodies in the super lab, and it's so dark and you feel awful being in that lab at this point. And I almost feel like I haven't left yet. Like, going into this episode, it's still a very visually dark episode with a few exceptions. A lot of it takes place at night with just Mike and Manuel. It just feels like this dark, lonely place. So I feel like there's got to be a couple bright spots left. Like with Mike, you said earlier that you'd be almost satisfied if we don't see him again, or we don't necessarily need to see him again. Logically, I don't necessarily see a need to have Mike show up again, but emotionally, I kind of want to see him with Stacy and Kaylee one more time, because the last time we saw them interact, was him calling through the window while they were looking at the stars. And I want to see one more moment of joy for him, knowing that he's only a few years out from getting killed by Walt. But yeah, to your point, it's just been so dark. Is it going to end this way, or can we get a happy ending? I don't know.
What do you think about that, Jim?
How
feel
about
like
Gene?
there's a redemption coming?
You think there's a shot that Gene gets some kind of redemption? Because that's the only way I see it. Because we know what Saul is.
Yeah. This next one, which I see what you did with your name there, so I'm not going to read it, but thank you for the $4.99. This is their idea is that the Gene teaser is him giving up but not turning himself in, going out like at Davison, Maine, loud as hell and flashy as Saul. And I do think that he will take one last turn, and really there's a lot of possibilities to pull on threads from the entire series, with him doing one last ridiculous scam in the Gene timeline. But I also think that that'll be the setup for the end rather than the actual end.
Yeah, in terms of what I would love to see from Gene is less any kind of reverting back to his Saul Goodman persona, unless he uses it almost as a tool to, and maybe he needs to, if we're going to get to this Gene versus Jeff, he needs to pull out something from his Saul Goodman tool belt. But what I would really like to see is some version of redemption. And I think part of that is because with Walter White in Breaking Bad, by the end of the series, I kind of felt like he had a few redeeming qualities for sure, but at his core, there were some rotten things. There was the pride and ego, as Mike would say. But with Jimmy, I feel like his exterior is rotted to hide. There is something there at his core, which I like. And I think for a while, he genuinely wanted to do the right thing, and things went wrong. So I haven't let go of that part of him I like. and I would love there to be some sort of redemption. I don't know if that means a happy ending, but maybe it means a bittersweet ending where at least he's done something to make amends. Could he call up, Howard's widow and tell her a little bit of the truth of what happened, for example? Maybe confess to his role in what happened to Chuck. So maybe things don't end well for him, but at least he's kind of unburdened himself and tried to. You can't right these wrongs, but at least do something in that direction.
All right, Mr. G, thank you for the $5. They kind of wrapped up all the stories. Any chance that that was the last major part we see of the Saul timeline, and now move on to Gene's story? Well, the only I can see how you could arrive at that idea, and I think there's definitely a possibility that we could see a blending of the two. But we do know that Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston are coming back, and I saw something yesterday that one of the major, I can't remember who was, Deadline, Hollywood, or one of those, Variety maybe, was saying that they confirmed that they will be in the very next episode. So yeah, I don't think it's going to go full Gene yet. I think that there should be at least, based on what's left, I think there should be at least 2 full Gene scenes, or episodes. But they might just do a split, like where they show things in both timelines, because they're not really, it's going to be more of a straightforward thing in Gene, but maybe touching on some different time periods, like because the time that we saw so far is 2005 and whatnot.
Have you guys been seeing the after episode little teaser things that
Yes.
last week's was Jimmy saying, like, eventually we'll forget all this and we'll realize we're healing, that thing. And then this week you had the mall, which was definitely desaturated, like Gene, like his timeline. The interesting thing about the last one was there was a line from the beginning of the episode, right, where he tells Kim, like, we'll forget about all this and start healing, and it was accompanied by the flash forward timeline in the image of his halls of justice. So I'm wondering if we'll get the same thing from the next episode. We'll get the line from earlier in the episode, and then the flash forward could happen at the end to the Gene timeline.
Interesting.
Yeah, logistically that feels like it could work, because we've got so few episodes left now. So if they aren't going to kind of jump back and forth between the timelines, it feels like by the end of the next episode, like, we got to start getting to that Gene timeline so we can properly explore that and wrap it up.
Yeah, I do think there's a real possibility that the next episode might open with the Gene teaser, but I don't, I know that they're going to go back and forth, at least to the point where they've been teasing, Walt and Jesse, and that's going to be more than just a short scene, it seems like. So yeah, well, I could go either way. I could go with completely linear, or keep us on our toes by jumping around. That would be fine with me too. Jason King does not have a comment, but thank you for the $20. I tried to look down here. There's a follow-up statement here where he says, an idea I came up with recently: we've been worried the whole time about Kim dying. Is Saul Gene going to die at the end of the series? It's always a possibility, but I feel like I said a few minutes ago, I feel like they're setting him up for, because the question I keep finding myself asking is, what's left of Jimmy inside there, and we talked about Gus a little bit, about how he chooses to deprive himself of the of the life that he clearly wants to have, because he has this goal, that he wants to get revenge. And I was thinking about this, sort of a parallel with what's going on with Jimmy. And it's not that he deprives himself as Saul. He uses that as a coping mechanism, is what it appears like. And he indulges in everything. Jimmy wasn't all that indulgent, before. And this guy, like we just said, is he's obviously full on, he's talking about Xanax, his Xanax guy on the phone. And I mean, he's definitely, he doesn't have very many inhibitions holding him back from just, living life in the way that he sees it. But I mean, he's also, all of that requires him to stuff down who he really is. He has to bury Jimmy to become that. So, he's kind of doing the same thing. He's depriving himself of that Jimmy life, of being who he really is, in pursuit of trying not to feel the pain that is reality.
Yeah, and I think as Jimmy, he was sort of constantly rejected, right? Chuck rejected him, and Kim didn't really enter into a relationship with him until he started to show a little bit of his Saul Goodman side. So, yeah, I guess now as Saul Goodman, he's indulging, and he has all these people who are accepting him because they want to use his services and use him to do whatever awful drug dealy type of things they're doing. So it's almost, I don't know. I'm thinking about him versus Gus, where it does feel like they've both given up similar things, where Jimmy can't really have a genuine relationship with anybody the same way Gus can't, even though on the surface, Jimmy does have plenty of relationships with people, but it's as Saul Goodman. So even when he's surrounded by people, to me, he looks totally alone because
Yeah.
they don't know Jimmy.
Yeah. To jump in just briefly, that if you think about this, the time skip, he went from a genuine relationship to a, I don't know, transactional, I guess, right?
Mhm.
He's paying this woman he's with to, for her time to stay with him. So that's pretty interesting too when you think about it.
True. And I think it makes sense that Kim's rejection of him would be the one to push him over the edge, because she was almost like a stepping stone where she did know the real Jimmy, but like I was alluding to earlier, the kind of spark that ignited their relationship was the Slippin' Jimmy side and a little bit of the Saul Goodman antics. So she was sort of the last person that accepted this transitional version of Jimmy Saul. And I think her rejection sort of pushes him over the edge, where he has to start looking for companionship on a, like you said, transactional level.
Yeah, what I think when I hear this is Jimmy's been dead for multiple years now, right? I mean, when we go to the gene timeline, he's been dead for a decade, or close to it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely affected him.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae Morik, thank you for the 5. Nobody, including Kim, wanted to get into business with Jimmy. Is Saul, I'm only accepted for being a scumbag, so I'm going to embrace it. I think there's some of that in there, but I think there's maybe it's a little more nuanced. But yeah, I totally get this of like, that his drive is to be accepted. He wanted to be accepted by his brother. He wanted to be loved by his brother. It's sort of why he has that kind of, personality where he becomes everyone's friend, by doing, I don't know if it's like histrionic is the right word, but he sort of adapts himself to whatever he's doing to try to make himself more likable to the people he is. And of course he's trying to gain an advantage. He uses it to manipulate people as well. But, deep down, I think that they've been pretty clear on saying that, his thing is that he wants to be loved. Walter White wanted to have power. He wanted to be respected. Jimmy is more about like, he wants to be accepted and loved. And, he's been, he's had his heart broken a lot of times at this point. We sort of watched that happen. But, I think that, yeah, like if you're getting that through these channels, I think you were just sort of saying that, Gil, too,
Right.
if that's the way you're getting that reinforcement, if that's what you really need, then that's where you go. Right.
And I think we see that positive reinforcement throughout the series. And not only do we see positive reinforcement, where we see one of the only people who really respects Jimmy early on was Marco. And that was only when Jimmy and Marco were pulling scams together. And then the next episode, the opener to season 2, again, when Jimmy and Kim finally start a real relationship, it's after they pull a scam together. And even recently, when Jimmy went to the courtroom and he was a total pariah, then he comes back to the Better Call Saul office and he's totally accepted there. But on the other side of it, we also get negative reinforcement for trying to do good. And that a lot of that came from Chuck, where Jimmy at least thought that he was genuinely on a path toward doing the right thing, but Chuck never believed him. So trying to do the right thing screwed him over, but doing the wrong thing, everybody loves me. So I think that's definitely a variable here.
You want to add anything, Jim?
Nope, good.
All right. Rod Kiefer, thank you for the $4.99. With no Kim, why should we care about Walt, Jesse, or Marion? And Marion is referring to the Carol Burnett character that we didn't get to meet yet. With no Kim, why should we care about Walt, Jesse, or Marion? Well, I mean, Kim is a very important part of the story, but it is Jimmy McGill's story, and they've done a pretty good job of only bringing back characters whenever it serves the story, when it makes sense for what's happening. So I think we'll care about Walt, Jesse, and or Marion because it will tell us something that we didn't already know about this character, Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman.
Yeah, it needs to. I'm not super thrilled with, fan servicey stuff most of the time. I felt like even early on in this series, they leaned into that a little bit hard for me with the Tuco stuff. But if they're just going to bring Walt and Jesse back to say, hey, we brought Walt and Jesse back, it's not going to do it for me.
No, and I mean, I think they've been pretty,
but
yeah, I think they've been pretty vocal about they're excited about it and they think it makes sense at least. And I trust them, especially after this episode.
Yeah,
I'm definitely like, just show me what you got. Let's see what you came up with.
Yeah, it is funny. Jim, I remember watching that first episode and all the interviews leading up to it were, we're not going to just throw in a bunch of fan service cameos. Then the end of the episode is like Tuco opens the door and looks around, and I kind of rolled my eyes at it. And then I loved the episode that followed and loved what they did with it. So it kind of bought my trust back. And then they've shown such restraint since then. The fact that Walt and Jesse aren't showing up until now. I mean, even the fact that we were living with Jimmy McGill and not Saul Goodman for so long, I'd love to believe, and I do believe, that it's not going to be a fan service cameo. But I mean, to Rod's point here, I don't think we necessarily know why we're going to care, but I believe they're going to give us a good reason to.
Yeah. Seth Bunerkemper. Thank you for the $20. That's very generous. I really love the context that they gave to Mike and Gus this episode. Peter Gould said when asked if he could give context. What is that word? Context, I think, yeah. For the episode that Mike would go darker and Gus would find love. Was this it? Will there be more? And no, I do believe that this is exactly what he was talking about whenever he did those in the preseason. I think this was the Gus finding love thing. I don't think that they'll be expanding on. I mean, they could, but it would feel a little tacked on after they did it so perfectly right here. At least from my opinion. Mike could go darker. He's in a pretty dark place right now. But like I said, I think it just sort of connects with what we were just talking about. I don't think that they should bring them unless it has something to do. Like, I don't think they need to do anything more with those characters specifically. Gil was under the impression that it would be nice to see a moment of joy for Mike, and I don't disagree with that. I think that would be cool. But I think that if they do. Mike is, I think, a little bit different because the show is somewhat about Mike as well. Mm-hmm. Like he's more of a main character than Gus. Gus is an important character, but we actually followed Mike, and he had his own narrative throughout the series. So, Yeah, I don't know. You guys have anything extra you want to add to this?
I mean, if they tried to give Gus another love interest now, I don't know if there's enough time to do much justice to that. And what I don't want is a scenario where we leave this series with questions like we had about Kim. Like, where's Kim? Is she in the background during Breaking Bad? Like, why don't we ever see her? You know, I wouldn't want to see that with like a Gus love interest, because that could just be a never answered question.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that, but that is a real obstacle to having him do anything like that, because he definitely didn't. There were no signs of that in the original series. Okay. Kevin Swiber, thank you for the $5. What is the big white building in Saul's car window reflection in Fast Forward? It really stood out. Even caught his eye for a couple of secs. I don't know. I didn't catch. I mean, I saw that there was some. I thought it stood out. Like, I didn't really dwell on it, but I did think it was weird seeing him drive around in the car. That it seemed more like it didn't. It almost seemed like he was in a new place, but he was in Albuquerque, as far as I know, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
It seemed
so.
like It seemed like we saw like just a little a different look at Albuquerque there, but I don't know anything about the city myself. Do you guys know this big white building? Any idea?
Nope.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, Kevin. I did, like I said, notice that it looked a little different, but I've never been to Albuquerque, so I don't have any context beyond that. Mike D, thank you for the $5 Canadian. End of episode 9, Saul accepted public exposure case. Same offense he mixed up for Badger when meeting him. I think the current timeline now is season 2, episode 8 of Breaking Bad. Well, a lot of people were saying this yesterday, and one thing I know for sure, this shirt that he's wearing, that we see in this, in the fast forward, that is definitely not what he's wearing on the day whenever he goes to meet with Badger. So I do believe that people had pointed out the license plate tag. That makes sense to me. They have made mistakes before, though. At the same time, a lot of times you hear people saying they never make a mistake. Everything's for a purpose. But I think if you really look at it objectively, these guys have had a couple mistakes like that before. So I don't know. But I don't think that the public masturbator comment was more than like it makes us think about that, but I don't think it's directly relating to Brandon Mayhew.
He also says another one of these, so you get the impression there are many of these cases. So so I think when it happens to Badger, that's just one in a long line that he gets probably on a daily basis.
The Fifi one was the old man that was what his deal was too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know he was some sort of a sex offender. I don't recall if they said what exactly the offense was, but that would make sense.
Yeah, so maybe it's an ongoing thing. It to me that almost sounds like after the giant testicles thread, that almost sounds like Thomas Snaw's influence.
That's right. Yeah.
Matt Polikin, $4.99. Thank you very much. Like the Kim arc, it explains why Saul isn't totally broken. We have all experienced heartbreak, but it's something to overcome, not like her dying. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, before there was this idea that he couldn't be the Saul that we knew in Breaking Bad, be so happy-go-lucky if Kim died. I don't think that I think they recontextualized that rather than proved it because of what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like I think he's equally devastated in some ways that she's still out there, and that she just decided to leave his life. You know what I mean? It wasn't some tragedy that he can move on from. It's something, where he can always think, what did I do wrong? How could I have done that different? And when I say they recontextualize it, I mean, they showed that he's just throwing himself into being this happy-go-lucky, crazy, criminal lawyer so that he doesn't have to experience that. Just the same way he did, he started this process after Chuck died. You know what I mean? He said, "Hey, look, I'm not going to be Jimmy McGill anymore because that name's burned. I'll always be Chuck's, loser brother." And so his solution for that, to not think about how awful Chuck dying made him feel, and he had that same responsibility. He knew on some level that he was responsible for what happened. He started this process, and now it's just like turned up to 11.
Yeah, and I would just add that it's heartbreak, but they've also shown us that it's an especially painful heartbreak for Jimmy, because I think he sort of put all of his eggs in the Kim Wexler basket. She was sort of the last personal connection left for him, especially with his close friend Marco gone. He was so horribly rejected by Chuck, and then was partially responsible for pushing Chuck over the edge. So it's not simple heartbreak. It's also, I think he walks away from the Kim experience saying, I will never be accepted. The only way I can be accepted is by throwing myself into this Saul Goodman creature.
Yeah.
Feels a lot like Severance, except Saul is who he is when he's severed.
Right.
And there really is no time in his life when he's not severed, right? It's when he's sleeping, so he can't really affect him.
Yeah, it is sort of like a light switch, huh? Like just flipping the switch.
Yeah, and that was also motivation for, I forget, Mark, was that the main character's name in Severance?
I think so.
Yeah, so for him, he was also dealing with trauma, and what helped him deal with it was, well, if I just switch to a different personality when I'm at work, that's partially
and then
how he
just
dealt with
drink all the time when I'm at home.
Right.
Yeah,
that really is I hadn't thought about that at all. I like that, Jim. I hadn't made that connection, but Mark and Saul do have some things in common there. Let's see here. Alex, thank you for the $5. Could the license plate be a red herring? I mean, he has a vanity plate, and I could see him just not renewing the plates. Seems closer to Breaking Bad. Yeah, it's like I said, it could just as easily be a mistake. I wouldn't put too much. I don't know. I would just say let's wait and see, because it doesn't really make a big difference until we find out how the story is going to shape up, anyways. I don't think that they would, to answer your question specifically, Alex, I don't think that they would do that on purpose. Like, a sleight of hand, like, we'll make this, we'll put this date on this plate just to confuse everyone. Yeah. I don't see what they accomplished by doing that.
Right. That'd be, I think, too subtle of a twist to next episode. Be like, you thought it was 2005, but actually it's 2007. To the few people who were paying enough attention to notice the license plate, which was not me, at least not until my second viewing.
Yeah, that's some Westworld stuff.
Yeah,
the show does that very much.
Yeah, I've been listening. I've been just to do a little breakaway for a second. I've been really. I was done with Westworld. Like I kind of quit it, and then I was liking the first few episodes of the season. So I've been listening to your and Aaron's podcast, Jim, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go and read Reddit for hours again. You know what I mean? Like, I've been burnt. No. If they come back around, maybe I'll do it again later. But
yeah, just enjoy the show. Just watch the show and have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lesson that, it has other applications, you know what I mean? Because one of the things I was thinking about, the trickiness, because like we were talking earlier, there's so many endings in this. And Peter Gould, I think it was in the Insider podcast, he was talking about the, not knowing how it was going to end, and how in a way that's a relief sometimes, because when you have that ending in mind, you hold on to it. It's hard to hold on to for years. I mean, this show's been on for a long time now, Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that with, the way that it's kind of finding ways to surprise us and do new things, even though, there's been all these ideas of how these inevitable things would happen. And, it's like, if you think about it, like, to have the idea of, like, say Kim was going to go to prison, how much that's changed, by letting the characters do what makes sense for them instead of writing to that outcome. You know what I mean? So one of the things about the Westworld and shows that are that really reward that kind of, and Better Call Saul too, because it's a prequel and there's so many references to the original. One of the bad parts of that is that you find things when you're looking, and you get attached to them, and then it kind of paints what actually happens in a different light, and kind of takes away the enjoyment on some levels. So I agree with you that with what's going on with that show is, like, I'm enjoying it a lot more when I'm not, like, obsessing over the details that are going on.
For sure.
So maybe that fits in a little bit with that license plate question. So it's not a complete derailment of the train. Summatrasix 9.99. Thank you very much. After this episode, it's brutal to go back and watch how J and K treated Howard for coming clean, his role in Chuck's death. Love to hear you contrast those scenes with this episode. Yeah, Howard for coming clean. I don't. You say J and K, that's throwing me off a little bit, because
it's he's
it was
talking
Jimmy.
about. Well, I think it's when Howard, when he comes to Jimmy and Kim and basically says, "I went to Chuck and sort of forced him into retirement. I think I may have driven him to do what he did, and I think he committed suicide." And Jimmy says, "That's your cross to bear." And
yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though. That was fully Jimmy. Like, Kim didn't really back him up, or
I see what you're
she
saying.
She was kind of like couldn't believe what she was seeing either at the time, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Later, and just choose into him for that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very complicated scene, because it's not clear, especially when it first aired. Like, now I've kind of, like, mellowed on it. When I first watched it, I was like, is he doing that? Like, does he see an angle here, like, that he can play against, this situation? Like, he can actually, use Howard as the scapegoat for this, like, because he just goes over and he feeds the fish, and he just sort of moves on. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, well, that's your cross to bear. Now I think that there was, it's more of an inability to process what's happening. Not so much like he just wanted, he's like, oh, well, I'm off the hook. I'm ready to go feed the fish.
Well, and specifically, so that was actually also the moment where Jimmy learns that he was even more responsible than he realized, because Jimmy had gone into the insurance office and told them about Chuck's breakdown in court. They raised the premiums, which is what caused Howard to push Chuck into retirement. So Howard mentions the insurance issue to Jimmy. And up until that point in the episode, Jimmy was basically catatonic, barely talking. And he goes, the insurance? And Howard tells him they were raising the insurance. And at that moment, Jimmy just transforms. Suddenly he's all smiles, he's whistling, he's feeding the fish. So to me, it always felt like, or at least looking back on it, it felt like as soon as Jimmy is confronted with this guilt that he's responsible for this, he kind of shoves it down. It's sort of a prototype for Saul Goodman.
It's a mini Saul move.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I understand what the question's asking.
Well, there is another. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I'm still forming an idea here.
Yeah, I was gonna say just seeing this question specifically made me think of one scene from this episode where is it Cheryl? Is that Howard's wife?
Yeah.
Wait, when they
Cheryl
speak
Hamlin.
when they speak with Cheryl, and she's trying to make sense of what happens, and Kim lies to her. That felt almost equally cruel as Jimmy saying, this is your cross to bear. And it feels like such an injustice in this series. The Hamlins, both of them are so horribly treated. and to even see it up until now in this moment. And that's one moment I would love to get your guys' thoughts on, is just why did Kim choose to say that? But both make me, anytime I think of Howard or Cheryl, I just, it turns my stomach to just see how horribly treated they've been throughout the series. Especially, I'll just do a couple more things on that, but just Howard's was such an interesting character where we never got to see much of his personal life. We would sort of just check in on him every once in a while. There's a certain period of time on the show where I kind of forgot about Howard a little bit. And then you see him and he's just ragged. He's suffering from insomnia. And then Jimmy has that great line, I got to ask, what's eating you? And so we just see these little flashes of this character. We see the Namaste license plate. So just in minutes, if you put his screen time together, you get this entire journey of Howard facing up to the fact that he may have pushed one of his closest friends into killing himself, watching him suffer, watching him come to some kind of reconciliation with that, only to get pulled into this scam and then killed. It's sickening. Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff with his wife and Kim is particularly brutal. And I think Kim does it because she knows it'll work, is the truth of it.
Yeah.
Like, this is the lie that I need to tell. And this is the worm that I need to use to get into this woman's head to make her believe the lie that we're spinning.
100% agree.
Let her hang herself here, just give her enough rope. And then when she looks to Cliff is going to, be Cliff and not confirm it publicly, but like all but confirm it. Right. She just knows it'll work, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal, but she's doing what she's got to do in that moment to sell the story. And it's
surgical. Surgical
in some ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think you're both right. It's so hard to stomach the idea that even after everything they went through with Howard, she even has it in her to tell that lie. But as much as Kim is suffering right now and dealing with this trauma, she is still that person that when something needs to be done, if she was willing to go to this random stranger's house, pull out a gun and shoot him, she can tell this lie.
Yeah. And I think what, I'm glad you brought this up, because no one else has really mentioned it in the questions. And it's the turning point too, right? I mean, she does it. She knows that she could continue to do it. It basically proves that if she wanted to, she could stick with this life and continue to get away with the lie. She's that good, and she makes this up on the spot. This isn't a planned thing, and Jimmy's a pro at doing this sort of thing. And, she's able to step in and just deliver, like what you said, Jim, exactly what needs to be said. And it's just so, I mean, it's dirty, like she uses, this situation against a grieving woman who just lost her husband. It's fascinatingly bad. And
they just took him from her too, is the worst
part. It's their fault.
Yeah. It's horrible. And the poison comes into play here, right? Because Jimmy sets this up and she knocks it down. It's this tag team play that they do that's so vicious, that just keeps hurting people. And you're right, Gil, that's when they see it. That's when she notices, yeah, this is very bad. We've gone too far here, and we're going to keep doing it. Because I think also in her head, she's saying, I just got away with this. I just nailed that pitch. And that was a thrill for me too.
It's because doing anything good is satisfying. Like if you're that good at something, how can you not be like, damn, I can't believe that went so well. In light of the gravity of the situation, it's a great. I mean, it's such a great. The way that they wrote this is amazing. But like I said, I do think that this is the moment. Like by the time they go back out into the parking garage and they have that kiss, I believe she's already made up her mind that she's leaving. This is the point where she says, and it's in contrast with what Mike does whenever he gets the information from Manuel that it never ends. Mike gets the idea that it never ends, and he says, okay, but I got this thing I got to do. So this is my path. And she says, if I keep doing this, we're so good at this, and it's never going to end. There's always going to be a reason to keep things are just going to keep happening, and we'll never be able to get away from it.
Yeah, and I thought a lot after the episode about what that kiss was. And I think, Pete, you're right that at that point she realized I need to leave Jimmy, the two of us, which is almost the wrong way to phrase it because she doesn't, in her mind, the two of them should not be together. She does want to be with him, but she recognizes objectively we are poison when we're together. Saying that she left him almost makes it sound a little bit more selfish than it is. And I think in that moment, she wasn't ready to say it necessarily. So the best she could do is almost like conciliatory kiss. I want to tell you, I don't know what to say. I don't have the words for it. I care for you. So I'll kiss you. I'll show you.
It's not exactly the right sentiment, but this reminded me of The Godfather when Michael kisses Fredo. It's like, yeah, this is a goodbye, right? This is a I know what has to be done here, and this is the end.
Yeah, and I thought, you know, when I did my video, I thought that there's the point, like, yeah, she's decided, and then what confused me a little bit was why she withdrew from the bar initially, but I think, you know, that just sort of drives it home, you know, that this thing was kind of drawn, it kind of came from her idea that she should decide who deserves justice and help to use these scamming powers with Jimmy to kind of tip the scales. And so, you know, her pulling out from the bar, that's her saying that I shouldn't have anything to do with, you know, matters dealing with justice. And it makes me worry a little bit that she's just going to have this life where she's punishing herself for what's happened, you know, in contrast to Jimmy not ever being able to look at it.
Yeah, I kind of last night when I was talking about this episode, I was sort of thinking out loud how I would love for Kim to just leave this life behind. And at its core, I mean, she loves being a lawyer. She's like you were saying, Pete, when you're really good at something, it kind of creates a passion for it. But
Yeah.
at its core, she wanted to help people, and working in the law is not the only way to do it. So I would love for her to find another way to help the people who need it and get some kind of a happy life now that she's left Bad Choice Road. And a couple people countered that by saying she doesn't deserve it because she still has not owned up to her role in what happened to Howard. And deserve is one variable, right? That's not necessarily the way the world works. Or sometimes this
No.
story will go out of its way to give people what they deserve, but not always.
Yeah.
And there's also the complicating factor that if she does come clean and reveal what happened with Lalo and everything, that potentially puts her in the crosshairs and that could get her killed. And the punishment should fit the crime, right? Execution is not the right outcome for her either. So, sometimes it's a messy ending. But yeah, I would love to believe Kim could go out there and find some other way to get fulfillment in life outside the law. I mean, within the law, not breaking the law, but outside of working in the legal profession.
Yeah.
I think one of the other reasons she gives up her law license here is because it's kind of a point of no return. I think I wonder if in her head she's thinking, well, if I go back to this apartment and I talk to Jimmy about this, I might end up changing my mind. But if I go through with this before I tell him, before he knows, and before we have a conversation, then I can just make it final before we even have to consider it.
Yeah, that's a good point because that was his initial, hey, let me go get the printer. We're going to get this, stay up all night and order pizza because we need to be together.
Yeah, he tried.
He did definitely try. Seth Buhner Kemper, thank you for the $5 again. I'll probably murder your name if you decide to do that again. I apologize for that. Anyone think we would see Walt or Jesse at the end of the episode in Saul's office for a major cliffhanger payoff, even if it's just on the phone? I don't know. I thought that was possible. It felt like it would be a little bit structure wise. It seemed like it would be like tacking something extra on the end that after like such a like what felt like at least in my experience, like a flawless episode as far as the way they set things up. It felt like an unnecessary step like, where you can bring that in and really showcase that in the next episode. But every time when you see that, the Constitution behind him in that room, it always feels like that could happen, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really to add besides I had the exact same thought. It's impossible not to say, is this where it happens? Are they going to show up?
Yeah.
But that may have been a good example of them showing the restraint and saying, not yet. We're not quite there yet.
Don't worry, it's coming. We're definitely, definitely told you that at the beginning of the season, so you'd be looking for it everywhere. But it looks like we're finally going to get to it. Sue's B Art, thank you for the $4.99. Do they divorce before Sandpiper pays off, so Saul gets all the money? What do you think about this, Jim?
Well, I mean, the first half of that question is a good question on its own. Do they divorce? I don't know. They'll probably want to make it official, I suppose. But I don't know if Saul's going to get all the money. I assume he gets a lot of money based on what his house looks like.
Yeah.
I assume a lot of that Sandpiper money is going toward that McMansion in the middle of Albuquerque with the marble floors and the Roman pillars and stuff. So, yeah, he probably gets a good chunk of it, if not all of it.
Do you think Kim would be like, I don't want any of that money. It's dirty money. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about this, there is one thing I'm curious to get you guys to weigh in on. That the flash forward in episode 405, he talks about this call that's coming in on his birthday. He tells why am I blanking on
Francesca?
Francesca, that she'll be there at that time on his birthday to get this call. And I've always thought that was Kim. Does this mean okay, so I still do. I still think it's Kim. And so that would mean that they still have some connection. They still talk on some level. So what do you guys think? Yes or no?
We could have used one more line from Kim before she stormed out of the room. I'm never speaking to you again, except once a year on your birthday. I'm going to call you. But I could see her, one lonely night drinking a glass of Zafiro Añejo, and, she thinks of Jimmy and just calls him on his birthday to wish him a happy birthday. I could see it. I mean, I definitely think it's a possibility. I'll say I don't think we've seen the last of Kim. I think that if there is some kind of redemption and some kind of Gene looking back on his life and trying to make sense of it, I feel like Kim's got to figure into that. And maybe they meet again when Jimmy has more clarity and understands why she left. And there could be some great conversation there.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see just an episode that's an hour-long phone call between the two on his birthday. Honestly, I bet they could make that entertaining.
I would love that. It could be like a bonus podcast episode, audio only.
Yeah, geez. I mean, that just, I don't know why, but just right in that part of this conversation, I just was like, damn, it's coming to an end, isn't it? It really is winding down. There's only a few more of these weeks left. But yeah, I don't think we can say for sure about to get back to the question about that. I think there was a deleted scene from Breaking Bad where he said that he had 3 ex-wives. I know that, there's a comment about his second wife, which we know that's before he was married to Kim. They did, clear that. They did make that clear when they got married. And I don't know if that other one counts because, like I said, it's from a like a DVD extra. It never actually showed up in one of the Breaking Bad episodes. All right. Robert, thank you for the Ron 10. RON 10. The weirdness of Kim's name is still important. I never thought it was. I never really bought into that theory. Did either of you guys ever think about this idea that she didn't have a middle name?
Lots of people don't have middle names, right?
Yeah, neither of my
That's what-
parents have middle names.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the way that there was a big thing about it. I think it was a popular theory that it was proof, that she was living under an assumed identity.
Mm.
Do you think there still is room for a swerve like that she wasn't Kim all along, and that would make sense? And because, like you said, I do expect her to come back, and I do think that there's real potential for her not just to show up back in Jimmy's life, but to see some of her life in the way we see Gene scenes, But I don't know that any of those theories about her really hold up anymore. I feel like it's pretty. I feel like they told us here that it's pretty straightforward. They're not really keeping too many secrets from us. There's stuff we don't know about her, just like there's stuff we don't know about Gus's past in Chile. But for the most part, we can believe what we've seen as far as what the character's done. So I don't expect that name thing to come back up. All right. Space King, thank you for the $5. Has anyone mentioned that Kim didn't mention divorce? Are they still married? Well, we were just talking about that, and it's a big question. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like in that moment she just wanted to. That was kind of the logistics of what happens next were very secondary to making it clear why she's leaving, and then leaving before, like you were saying earlier, Pete. She doesn't want to have a risk of changing her mind or anything. That's why she notified the bar. If I had to predict logistically what happens next, I would imagine maybe she tries to get the divorce, but it's done with as little contact between them as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Using Cheryl as their attorney.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be something. I mean, I'm down for having the actor come back. I mean, she did a great job. Like she was like in maybe 5 minutes of screen time in the entire series, and just 100% Howard Hamlin's wife that we never knew about, and now we know so much about. You know what I mean? Like it's just a great interjection of a side character there. Tristy, thank you for the $5. Something has to happen to make Kim go into hiding. No need to make secret call on public phone 1 time a year if not on the run. But now we are in Breaking Bad timeline. Thoughts? Well, I was thinking about this when we were just talking about the other question, and I think that you could answer that by her just not wanting Jimmy to know where she's at. Wanting to be able to check in on him, but do it in this anonymous way where he can't come looking for her, or he can't come and try to put himself back into her life. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would think the barrier there would be emotional, certainly. That's the distance she's keeping, and why it would be once a year. Not because like logistically it doesn't work out, just because it's all she can really bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, second that. Totally agree.
Let's see what we got here. Thank you for that question. Matthias Munchmeyer, CLP 2500. I feel like Gus Weinstein would have won some layers if the wine had been Chilean. The waiter talking about a trip to Chile, nostalgia for Gus. Yeah, that would have been, I think maybe that they would not do that just because they don't plan to ever really reveal what happened there. So they don't want to kind of rub it in our nose. Like, hey, that one thing you don't know about Gus's past back in the Pinochet regime? Well, we're not going to be telling you any more about that either. But hey, here's a little reference to it just to annoy you or whatever.
I think it would have been distracting in the same way of if he was like, I'll have a bottle of Zafiro Añejo, you would suddenly start to think, well, what are they trying to tell us? And I think this scene wasn't about Gus's past. So to have us thinking about that, it might send us on a chase for clues that aren't there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this several times on the stream before, but I think we've all said that we're okay with not ever knowing more about his past. Is that where you're at on that too, Jim, or are you dying to know what his violent past in Chile was?
I mean, I would love to know, but I'm also okay with it not happening. I will say if they ever did another spin-off on this universe at any time in the future, I would love to see either Gus's background in Chile or Lalo, perhaps.
You know, it's interesting. I remember listening to your podcast, and you and your wife were mentioning that was your first choice of a spinoff. Like pretty quickly, you went into, and I don't know. I think what this episode did with this scene in particular was it kind of rekindled my interest in the character. You know, like I kind of there was a point in the series where I was just kind of like, okay, well, we have to do this Gus stuff, you know, like of course we need to, you know, it needs to keep moving, but I wasn't all that compelled with the new layers that we saw until we got to this one, just because you know, it kind of made all the other stuff make more sense. You know what I mean? Made it richer by adding something like that. Because before I just thought it made him darker, and you know, like he was already pretty dark. You know, he was already pretty menacing. So I do. I think like the long story short, I guess I do agree that it would be a good prequel if they went back into his life somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever do it, but if they did, I would watch.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You have a if you thought of a prequel, what would it be, Gil?
So I think I feel like it would start to feel a little claustrophobic if we continue to focus on these characters we're already familiar with, and we're continuing. You know, if we go further into the past and we're like, okay, at what point does Gus meet Max, and when do we get into the Breaking Bad flashback timeline? So I would want to get. I would love something in this universe that's maybe only tangentially related. The one I've always thrown out is the vet. The vet is such a fun character to me. We know nothing about that character. So to me, then I could have my cake and eat it too. We're in this universe. It's tangential to all this, but he could tell his own whole, you know, separate story, or something totally new, a character we've never met before.
Yeah, that's a good one. It would be weird if they just did something completely unrelated. And I don't really think, I mean, it doesn't seem like Peter or Vince have interest in it. I do wonder if they might, you know, AMC has said that they want a show. I do wonder if they might try to wrangle one of the staff writers into something. But yeah, I don't really, I mean, I didn't really think after Game of Thrones that they would come up with like 8 new shows either. So I mean, it's kind of like the time we're in, you know, where that might just be unavoidable in a way, you know. But
Yeah.
nothing really seems crucial. A lot of stuff that could be really cool, like you know, some of those side characters and things, and even Gus or, you know, Kim whenever she was younger, but none of it seems necessary.
Yeah.
Big Ralph, thank you for the 5. No one gets away scot-free. No more Mike/Gus. Jimmy is dead. Kim is BCS version of Jesse. Getting away, but not really getting away. False end for Kim. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. It's not really a question. It's more of a statement, but I'm with you.
Yeah, she's paid a very high price for the fun she had. You know, she that fun came to an end. She lost the person she loves. She's got being complicit in the murder of someone that she liked. There's a lot there. She's done a lot of bad to a lot of people, and I think that's going to weigh on her.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's another thing that flash forward did. It refocused on his character, on Jimmy and Saul, and it did, she, you know, it does make you wonder, like where does she go it's not clear. It's just clear that she needs to get away. But what she does as far as like how she reacts to that is a really big question. Because like you said, Jim, there's a big cost that went into it. Michael D, thank you for the 5. I think we may get 105 scene with Kim as she decides to leave Albuquerque for good. Makes peace with Jimmy and sets up the birthday call. I didn't really think about that. I assumed that she was taping up boxes because she was leaving town right then. I mean, she quit the bar, and I don't know what would keep her in Albuquerque, you know. But what do you guys think? Is it possible that she still stays around for a year after that last scene we saw?
I don't think that's the case, but it is possible that maybe we see that first birthday call. At some point you feel like it's got to get, how do they come back to that? How do they explain who that is? And one way to do it would be show us the first instance of it. Or maybe in once we're into the Breaking Bad timeline, we see that even then, Saul's getting that call once a year. And for a moment, lets his guard down. And he's the real Jimmy, for 5 minutes. So I think that's possible. But I do think I read it the same way. She's packing up. She's leaving town.
A birthday call like that. I like what you said about, seeing the real Jimmy for a second, because that further reinforces the reason he saw. What you said about earlier, Pete, about it, them non-verbally telling us all that stuff, it could then reinforce everything they did this episode.
Yeah. Really like the reference to the old garbage can there.
I was going to mention that actually, because I feel like a lot of people have mentioned in the comments that this felt like a series finale in some ways. A lot of the characters feel like they came to some conclusions, but it also had a few of the sort of tropes that you would see in a series finale. One of them being callbacks to the first episode, like Jimmy kicking that trash can. And then now in the finale, he notices, oh, they've replaced it. Or the saying goodbye to a very familiar location. So HHM, we're all in there for the last time. They're moving to another office, changing the name, or even just getting a bunch of supporting characters together for almost a goodbye. So seeing Schweikart, seeing Cliff, seeing all these people brought together. And there's
Eladio too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And even there, it was almost a reunion because it's so rare to see all those Salamancas together. So just these different gatherings, there were these trademarks of TV that really made this feel like a finale.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was a series finale in a way, but it happens to be a series that is a prequel and is actually been teasing what's a sequel at the same time. You know what I mean? So there's multiple timelines at play, but the BCS one does feel like it's been concluded, right? Ninoy Gob, thanks for the California or the Canadian 5. They didn't wrap up everything. Do you think they will ever shed light on who Gus was and his story with the Madrigal CEO? I don't, like, we just talked about this, and that Peter Schuler, they did bring him back in season 5. It's kind of hard to think about how they might shoehorn that into what's left. Either of you guys see a path to that?
No, I think the fact that you use the word shoehorn kind of that tells me the way I think about it too. It just doesn't feel necessary to me at this point, because that doesn't necessarily further the Gus character arc. It's almost more just filling in details that I don't think we necessarily need, and it just feels like limited real estate left for the series. So I don't think we'll see it, but
I mean, he was almost a perfect character. Like, they didn't even need to bring him back. Like, one of the best one episode arcs of all time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What, do you have anything with that, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, similar to the way that we really loved the time jump from Kim breaking up with Jimmy to him being Saul in 2005. I think they've done a great job leaving Gus in a place where you just see him going to Breaking Bad from here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's had that moment where he could have made a different choice, and then we see him make the choice to cut everyone else off from his life and be that guy. So yeah, I am perfectly happy where they left Gus. I don't need any more with him at all in this series. That said, I do still think there's plenty of time to tell a story here. I just don't
Yeah.
think it'll be Gus.
I agree. Big Ralph, thank you for the 5. So the Carol Burnett rumor was the producers pulling the biggest prank on their fans in TV history. Also, episode 9 is a false ending for Kim. The Carol Burnett rumor, it's not a rumor. She's definitely going to show up in the next couple of episodes. They announced that on the official AMC stuff. There was a guy who was like an industry insider who said she was going to show up in the last episode, more or less, and that didn't happen. So I'm not sure, where the signals got crossed on that, but I do expect to see her. It kind of changes up things a little bit. I mean, one of the theories on her was that she might be Ed's, doing Ed's business since Robert Forster couldn't come back. If she would have been vacuum cleaner, that didn't happen, obviously. Other ones was that she might be Kim's mother, which it doesn't really. The timelines didn't really seem too on the note. They didn't seem right to me, but it's possible. The one that I thought was fun was that maybe she is Jeff's mother. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy starts this thing in the gene timeline with Jeff, and then she becomes like the hidden boss that's behind Jeff that he wasn't anticipating. But it's pretty hard to say, that she's not a lawyer. She could be a lawyer. There was Judge Pompadoumian was a question. She could come back in that one, but it's like, do we really want to see Saul Goodman in the courtroom? I don't know. It depends if it's for a good reason. You know what I mean?
It's kind of funny. It feels a little bit like Star Wars has trained us. Anytime there's a new character, it's like, okay, who are they related to? Whose mother or sister or brother are they? Part of me thinks that this is probably going to be a new character, just somebody that plays some important role that maybe we don't even have, at least without looking at behind the scenes stuff. If you just look at what's been presented on the show so far, we might just not have the information needed to speculate on who that really is.
Yeah, so this question from Seth Bunerkemper again. $30, thank you. That's very generous. I didn't get to this before we just answered the exact same question a little bit ago. I can't think of anything else to add to it. I do, the second question you have here, I do think that ending on a high note is always a good thing to do. But, at the same time, if the TV landscape and the IP and what gets made and what gets produced, if it just happens to play out that way, that there has to be another show. I mean, this is one of those universes that I wouldn't be upset about, like, I don't know. I mean, The Walking Dead, I sort of lost interest in that a long time ago, and it surprises me that they continue to have new shows all the time. But I mean, that says something about how people consume things. You know what I mean? Like, if that show, was huge when it was at its height, if it can still bring in viewers by just spinning off pieces of it, then that's probably inevitable for a universe like this. I don't know.
I do think, not on the topic of spin-offs, but just what I would look forward to next. I do think it's a fairly recent phenomenon to have a showrunner whose name people know, who is there for the entirety of the series. Like, I think Walking Dead has had a few different showrunners, but I think everybody in this chat right now knows the name Vince Gilligan, knows the name Peter Gould, and some people might know the name Tom Schnauz and some of the other writers. And if I hear that one of them is working on another show or another movie or anything, that's enough to get me interested. So that's almost what has me more excited than a potential spinoff, is just what else will these people create next?
Yeah, that's a big part of the Lord of the Rings show. I mean, I'm not super into fantasy or the Tolkien verse necessarily, but knowing that Jennifer Hutchinson is one of the main writers definitely um, makes me interested. Plus, I mean, I know it's going to be a big production, so it's going to probably be pretty cool either way. But yeah, seeing her, that's the next big thing that she did after leaving Better Call Saul. That's exciting. Because she was around through Breaking Bad too, so you know what I mean. She basically shaped BCS a lot in the early seasons. Raven Scene, thank you for the $10 Canadian. I think Saul and Kim get a bad rap. This universe is pointing out the unwillable hell of empire. That meaning or virtue can come through genuine caring, which Saul does. Saul is just coping. Yeah, I mean, I think I can understand where this sentiment comes from, but I don't think you can say that it doesn't. I mean, especially after this episode, the choices they make matter. There's that they deal with the consequences of their decisions, and so yeah, it's complicated, and there is some of what you're saying there, but I would say that it's more complex. I mean, I think especially after this episode and what we saw with Gus and Mike, that they're saying, hey, look, this is about this is about choices. It's not just about the way that one particular thing. People are reacting. They react in different ways, and whenever they make choices or they make decisions, they have to deal with what comes after that.
Yeah, this is not a value judgment on either show, but I think in some ways this show is more complex than Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad was all about one man's pride, and then talking about empire there. I mean, he's trying to build one, right? This show, yeah, is far more complex. The ways that the characters interact with the consequences in their own lives is there's almost a straight line to draw between Walt and the consequences in his life. In this show, I think it's very different, way more complex.
Ed Scishands, and that is Ed Scissorhands in your avatar there. $4.99. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts about Gene giving himself up, returning to Albuquerque, Kim resurfacing to represent him with Carol Burnett as the judge? Okay. This is something that I do want to ask my guests as well. This is something I've been thinking about for a while. And I do feel I have been thinking about him returning as being that, like, if the question is there any Jimmy left inside Saul or Gene, is the way that they get to that, if there is a redemption, if he would turn himself in at the end, that would show that, right? That would confirm that. So it makes a lot of sense to me that he would turn himself in. But then there's this idea of what would happen next. And when I think about him turning himself in, I think it works the best if that's just it. Like, we see him walk into do that and we don't know what comes next. We don't know how that plays out. Like, I don't really envision a long epilogue of him going through court and finding out what his ultimate fate is. But what do you think, Gil?
Yeah, I guess it's I've talked so many times about wanting to see some form of redemption for Jimmy as Gene, and I think giving himself up would definitely be a way for that to manifest. It's so hard to predict, because one thing we're used to on these shows is having, for lack of a better word, a villain. We've had Lalo out there for so long. Even on Breaking Bad, once they killed Gus, shortly after that, they introduced this gang of white supremacist Nazis. And we have Jeff hanging out there. And I think Jeff is such an unknown Is it just Jeff? Who is this guy? Is he just some guy? Or is there some more powerful force there? And if that takes the focus, we might be asking more, how is Jimmy going to get out of this? What's it going to cost him? And is he going to survive? There might be bigger questions, I guess, than him turning himself in. So, yeah, I guess I'd like to see some form of redemption. That might mean giving himself up, but things also might get really complicated where I don't even know if that's necessarily going to be a choice.
Yeah, but I mean, like structurally, if he was going to do that, would you think that they would set that up in a way that we would get to see the full conclusion, or do you think it makes more sense to let the fans kind of put together what they think would happen to Jimmy in that situation?
Yeah, I feel like I'm tempted to agree that they'd probably say he's given himself up and find some nice place to kind of leave him on that journey and leave it a little bit of a question mark. Kind of similar to Jesse, he gets away, but you don't exactly know what happens next, until El Camino. So I think that's what my gut says we'd see. It's hard to picture some kind of procedural courtroom. We watch him go through the process and everything. It's hard to see it being dramatically compelling just to hear a courtroom say back to him, here's all the things you did and here's your punishment,
Yeah, that's kind of what I think about too. What about you, Jim?
That said, some of the courtroom scenes have been some of the most compelling stuff in the show, right? Like that scene with Chuck.
Chicanery, yeah.
Chicanery, yeah. Fantastic scene. But I agree with you. I don't think it would feel very satisfying to watch that process. I think it feels more satisfying just to know that he's willing to do it and that he has done it.
Yeah, because
just with that feeling.
Because at the core, that's what I want, is that I want to know that, if he goes through this, if he's out there living as a shell of a human being in this lifestyle that he has through Breaking Bad, and it just gets worse, and then he's stuck in Omaha. And the old question about Omaha, and the way that you used to think, or at least I used to think about it, is like, man, this is such a an awful fate for this colorful guy that was so dynamic in his time in Breaking Bad. And that's totally kind of turned on its head too, now that he was actually miserable, and he was just trying to deal with that reality.
But he was pining for those times. The opening of Gene in the first episode is him watching those old tapes.
Well, that's what you thought. I mean, it could be up to debate now, right?
True, yeah.
I back on his bad choices and saying, this is how I got here,
Yeah. And before, I mean, it was cut and dry, whenever I remember, we talked about this a little bit before, Gil, about how what a mystery the whole thing with Gene. Like right now, it's hard to almost remember, because Gene is just Gene. They did that for 5 seasons. They opened with it, but the first couple, you were just sort of like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And now they're recontextualizing that at this late stage in the game, and that, like, well, maybe we were actually wrong about what we thought was going on there.
Yeah, the Gene scenes, they really didn't have any story until, when did we saw Jeff for the first time in season 4, right? That's when he had the taxi driver. Yeah, up until then, it was kind of like, Gene's really sad. Gene used to be Saul Goodman. And I love those scenes, but they almost felt more like setting the tone, kind of a little reminder of where things are heading. We didn't really get true progression in the story, I think, until kind of season 3, I guess, when he collapsed. I think that's when that happened. And then 4, we find Jeff.
Yeah. 8. Sorry, I just saw a comment that said my audio is bad. Has that been a problem?
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay. 8H, and this is probably from like an hour ago that I'm scrolling.
And I can tell you from experience from last night, if your audio is bad, it won't be one comment.
Yeah,
a lot more than one.
8HNIC8. Thank you for the $4.99. Masterful episode, masterful season. The season is already borderline the greatest in the Breaking Bad universe, and with 4 episodes left, They will achieve this for sure. And I like your enthusiasm there, 8HNIC8. I agree. It's been a great season. The knocks that people had on the beginning, I think they've definitely, they definitely proved that patience, the patience was worth it at this point for me. I mean, maybe not for everybody, but I think so. I think it's just a great time right now, and man, I can't wait to see where they go next. It would be it'll be devastating if they were to drop the ball at this point, but I just I can't, it's really hard to envision it, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, that would be the saddest live stream ever. Just us. I don't know. Just
yeah, so
mourning the series.
all the other the first 12 episodes pretty great. This last one, it just didn't work for me. God, I hope we don't run into that. Mark Rayburn, thank you for the €5. I think Carol Burnett character is the vacuum cleaner's wife who is still working the business. I thought I started to warm up to this a little bit more last week, but I mean, now that who needs the vacuum cleaner person?
Right.
Kim was the one that would have made the most sense for that, and she doesn't need it anymore. She's just taking the matters into her own hands, as far as I can
can't
tell.
see Gene calling him again after the last time.
Yeah, no, I think he passed the point of no return on that. Do you see any chance of that happening? Anybody?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, okay. Lapse of apathy. Thank you for the 5. Was I the only one who found the jump from turning into Saul kind of depressing? I thought you were going to say too fast or something based on some of the comments. And I was going to be like, yep, you are. You're the only one. And the other hundreds of people that were commenting that same thing. But no, I found it absolutely depressing. It's kind of soul crushing. And I think that's why the quick cut really emphasized that and made that work. Did you guys think that somehow the turntable bed made that any less depressing?
It's more depressing, if anything. I think that the more opulence they could put into that scene, the more depressing it is, because it just feels so hollow.
Am I missing something with that? I mean, like, I've been around the block. I can't ever remember thinking this would be so much better if this was spinning around. You know what I mean? Like, I can kind of understand magic fingers, the things in the motel, where the bed shakes if you put a quarter in, but like the spinning around, it doesn't really make sense to me as how that, heightens the experience.
For me, it's a question of RPMs, but sure.
A little bit of centrifugal force, is that what it is? Or add a little danger, you might be thrown off if you're not like. Derek Kravitz, thank you for the $4.99. Love the level of detail and respect for timeline in this show, thinking specifically of the old school Clinton era $100 bill Gus pays for wine with. I did think I noticed that too, and I thought that was a nice touch. I can't think of anything else to tie into this that was cool in this episode, but that one did stand out to me. The old before they had the big photo on there and the sort of what's it called, the strip and the way that those $100 bills they were like that for my entire life until I think it was around 2000 or so that they started to switch those. So it was cool to see that. Not that I carried around a lot of $100 bills before that, but
I envy.
I had seen them.
Familiar with $100 bills.
Yeah, I had seen them. I mean, but when I was younger, I guess $100 bill, that was like, you would feel scared if you were walking around with that much money sometimes. Lax Lifters, thank you for the $5. I thought Lyle would have suffered a similar fate as Howard, being at the wrong place at the wrong time and being too enthusiastic, and Gus having Mike do it. Oh, okay. You got a little bit thrown off on that second part of the sentence. Yeah, I think that this is a joke. and it's funny.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if they a few episodes ago, if they were like, Lyle has a wife, and we meet her and we start to get to know him a little bit, I would have started to worry about him.
yeah, Lyle. I mentioned this in last week's stream. Like Lyle's just one of those characters. He's just plugging away out there, and you kind of think, man, I really like this character,
Mhm.
but you never have a reason to talk about that. And then like the last episode, I was thinking that like I was so into the Lyle stuff, and then go online and apparently everybody loves him just as much as I do. I found
Yeah.
that to be a big surprise. Like, oh, okay, it's not just me. This guy is awesome. And then I found out he was Dave Thomas's kid. Like that's really crazy. Bob and Doug McKenzie. Yeah.
Huh.
SCTV. Yeah, not the Wendy's one.
Not
The Dave.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's disappointing.
But yeah, he posted it on Twitter. He posted, this is my son. I forget what Lyle's first name is in real life, Harrison maybe or something like that. And yeah, he was like posting proud dad pics of Lyle and Gus together. I don't know which one he was. Was he Bob or Doug McKenzie? I think he was Doug McKenzie. But
Yeah,
I remember I had a tape, like it was one of my cousins or uncles or something, that it's one of those things you come across when you're a kid. And it's like you have not so many things, so you just like focus on it. So like I had a period where it wasn't even like current anymore. I just had this old tape of Bob and Doug McKenzie, and I was super into it because like I said, I didn't have that many other things to listen to.
I used to do that with VHS tapes. I think I watched
Yeah,
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey probably about 150 times. So just come home from school, start watching Bill and Ted every day.
not because it was bad or good or anything else. It was just because that was
it was in the
tape you had.
VCR.
Yeah. People don't really get that like how that was. I don't think anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, like you had, like, I remember like you'd have things like that where you would know about stuff, but you would never actually see it, and you would just talk about knowing about it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I heard there's this movie that that does this, and
Yeah.
and now you can just literally, if you hear about it, you can just watch it within minutes. You know what I mean?
I remember for me that was the Mario Brothers movie. I was like, they made a movie based on that game, and then I was like tracking it down. I found like the one specific library in my state that had a copy of it, and I was so excited to watch it, and then I watched it.
And then it didn't live up to the love you had for the idea that it was just out there somewhere.
Right.
The journey. It was all about the journey. JoJo's ASMR. Thank you for the A5. I know they expect us to put the pieces together, but maybe we could see a short montage of Saul getting the statue, his new car, and changed office. I don't really expect them to go back. They could. I think that there could be Courtney, who was on last week and who will be on the Saturday stream this week. She had she mentioned it to me. I don't know if it was her idea in the first place, but she mentioned to me the Ice Station Zebra Associates could be run by the Kettlemans, and then that has something to do with how that comes into his be on top of the building. Peter Gould said something about, like, because they had the Saul Goodman and Associates sign that they showed up in the teaser, in the first episode, and then they showed them putting that on there, and he was saying about how, like, that was to show how that was the end of her vision, Francesca's vision, and of course, sometime between the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode, he decided to change it all, and it didn't sound to me like they were going to fill in those blanks, but he did mention that they're aware of it, so maybe it's possible that we might see some more of it. Let's see here. Jacob Cahill, thank you for the 2. Is the flash forward 2005 2008? We believe it's 2005, but we can't say for sure. They could have made a mistake with the license plate, but that's the evidence. Jacob Cahill, thank you for the $5. When he references public fill in the blank, It makes me think Breaking Bad era with the Badger mix-up reference. Yeah, like we answered this already earlier, and that's I can see where you're coming from, but if it is 2005, like your last question referred to, then that wouldn't make sense. Lapse of apathy, thank you for the 10. Also notice how there is symbolism in the mug being a juxtaposition of the second best lawyer thermos. Yeah, I mean the world's best lawyer or world's greatest lawyer mug, that's something that existed in Breaking Bad. I thought it's kind of funny here that you say, well, okay, he graduated that because Kim's no longer a lawyer. That adds a little bit of context to that. But yeah, that's not a new thing for him. He had that. I think it's even in the opening credits, isn't it?
Oh, I think it is. Yeah. It is sad though to juxtapose the two of them, because that second best lawyer mug had that sentimental value. It came from Kim. She tossed it in the trash after it got shot, and now he's bought himself this soulless mug that sits on his desk.
Yeah, it is absolutely sad. That's true. Okay, there's another question here from Jacob. Thank you for the 10 again. And this is what we just talked about. Do we have anything else we can say about that? I don't. Would that be a good thing if that is a reference to Badger? Do we want to see Walt and Jesse right at that point, or do we? Is there anything we can talk about there? That do you guys have any favorite pet theory of how they come back?
Not really. I mean, I think for me, this reference is almost more just the comedy of Saul Goodman. Just that, of course, this is what he's going to be dealing with so frequently that he's going to say another case like this. But in terms of pet theories, at this point, I'm just waiting to see what they come up with, because, like you've said so many times, it's not going to be a fan service cameo. Sounds like it might even be more than a cameo. Somehow it has to serve the Jimmy McGill character, or serve a character on this show and their story. I can't wait to see what that is. I'm very excited to find out.
All right, Tony B 4247. Thank you for the 199. Kim's no lawyer. Who does he tell Francesca to call? That's an interesting question. We've touched on this several times in other streams, but there's no more HHM. They did address that. They're going to downsize. Have a different name, so it could be them. But I don't know who he has over there anymore that he would talk to. It's two separate things. He gives her a card and he tells Francesca to tell him Jimmy sent you, and then he also asked her if she'll be there when this other call comes in at a predisposed time on his birthday. So yeah, I never really had a great idea. And as they killed off Howard, it got harder to guess who that card might be. And I think I don't think that they probably knew whenever they had that scene happen. You know what I mean? I think they just said, we'll have him do this thing and then we'll figure it out later. That seems to be their process as far as writing, but you guys have any other thoughts on that?
Is it Cliff?
Could be.
Right. You basically just name any lawyers that we know are still.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Hate Jimmy though.
Yeah. Cliff might not. I mean, Cliff, God, let's just say real quick that Cliff, he really killed that performance too. In that I think Ed Begley Jr. really elevated that scene with Cheryl, because he was us, he's just like, man, I feel so awful about this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, he saw both sides of it. He doesn't want to tell her. He doesn't want to hurt her anymore, but he's totally had the wool pulled over his eyes because of what Jim and Kim and Jimmy did. Like, man, he really pulled that off. I thought, of course he's a good actor, but it's nice to have that guy in your back pocket when you need that, that scene to work. Rhubarb Pie, thank you for the $4.99. Considering her behavior all season, was Kim's breakup and Jimmy now more insidious? Would she had left anyways if Howard lived? No, I don't think she would. I think that they made that pretty explicit that she wants to be in the relationship. She loves Jimmy. That's not the question. The question is if they're together, they're poison. And if they are, then, you know, she can't really live with that because she knows that, you know, people around them will get hurt as a result. Do you have, you know, Jim, do you have
she already knew this is the thing. Like, that's the thing that's so tragic about Howard's death is it didn't need to happen. And I think you're right. They would have broken up sooner. And Kim lays out the problem here, right? Like if she had told Jimmy about Lalo being alive, he would have gone off and done his Jimmy thing, and he would have called off the operation on Howard, which would have cut off her fun, which is like the thing that she actually cared about, and she would have broken up with him. So like, there's a scenario where this works out and Howard doesn't die, and that is not the one that she chose to go down, and she did it for her own selfish reasons.
Though I do think that something was inevitable. If they got past Howard and he was just bruised and nothing more, then I think they would have looked for an even bigger scam to pull because they want to have even more fun. You know, they're looking for a bigger hit. So I think at some point something like this would have happened. And who knows, maybe by then they're too deep into it and whatever moral fibers are left in Kim are burned out by that point. But yeah, I think if Howard lived and this all worked out, they wouldn't have broken up. But there's a good chance something like this would have happened anyway, eventually.
Yeah, when you're talking about there, I thought about that. I really like how they set that up because Jimmy, he goes into the other room and he starts saying, you know, it wasn't your fault, it wasn't my fault, it was Lalo, you know. And I like that choice there where she doesn't even really engage with that. She just goes to telling him that, hey, you know what? I lied. I knew he was still alive, and I chose to ignore it, and I chose to keep that from you because I wanted to keep this thing going. So yeah, that is, you know, like I said, it's sort of a shift of responsibility there. You know, like yeah, it is Lalo's fault ultimately, but I'm going to put that on me because of the choices that I made, and there's, you know, part of that makes sense. You know,
right.
Bill Spruce, thank you for the 3. Howard is the perfect Shakespearean tragic figure. Can't say that I disagree with that. Very tragic. 2K is easy. Thank you for the $4.99. With Kim's story being done, Lalo, Nacho, and Howard being done, aside from Gene's timeline, what can they really do with 4 episodes left? I think we're going to see 2 Breaking Bad and 2 Gene, maybe 3 Gene, 1 Breaking Bad. Maybe they're all going to be mixed together. But I think that Kim's story is not necessarily done. I mean, we've kind of touched on this. So anything new come to mind that you want to add at this point? Either one of you?
No. Particular.
All right. Yeah. So I think, you know, I'm thinking about this because we are doing a stream about that on Saturday, and I'll do a preview video before that. And I'm kind of in a place, at least last night, whenever I was going to sleep, I was kind of at a place like, man, I kind of just want to see what they have in store. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's almost beyond being able to guess based on the fact that the way that they reset everything after this last episode. Rohan Gupta, thank you for 200 something that I can't really. Is nihilism most fundamental motivation of Jim and Kim? Not in my mind. Like I said, I think Jimmy is that he wants to be loved, that he wants to be respected. A lot of that stems from his inability to get that from Chuck. Kim, I think up until this episode, it was about justice. You know, doing, you know, through her pro bono work. I mean, that she's sincere in that. I've seen people say like, oh, well, that thing with Cliff prove that she never cared about the pro bono work. It doesn't in my mind, and maybe you guys have a different take on it, but in my mind, she's choosing the scam over that, but it doesn't mean that doesn't matter. I mean, she can be two things, you know?
Right. And that was in the heat of the scam. Like it was about to go down. So the excitement level, I think in that moment, she prioritized the scam over that. But I don't think that necessarily says, I mean, I definitely don't think it says that the pro bono stuff is just, a fake thing. I think it's legitimate.
Yeah, I think she's a more conflicted character in a lot of ways than Jimmy is. I think she does have the streak where she just wants to have fun and scam, and she wants that to be her life, but she also does believe in justice and believe in helping people, and that's a motivator too. And those things come into conflict pretty often, and ultimately, it's what does the relationship in.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that Saul, that there's some nihilism going on there, but not for the core characters, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
This one says, thank you, Dottie X, for the 199. Heard Tom S. said Francesca phone call don't happen. And I did see that tweet, but I don't know that he was being sincere. He was saying it to Alan Sepinwall, if I recall correctly, and I don't know. I didn't take it as like, okay, you can just take this comment at face value. It sounded like there was some kind of it was a little bit of banter. Do you guys have either one of you guys know what I'm talking about here?
I didn't see the tweet, but knowing Tom, like just knowing the way he tweets, I assume that he was joking.
Yeah, Alan Sepinwall. Someone asked Alan Sepinwall. I hope I'm not getting that mixed up because it's been about a week or so since I saw it. And hey, what about that call? And Sepinwall said, well, of course they wouldn't have. They have to touch on that. They wouldn't have brought it up if they weren't going to revisit it at some point. And Thomas Nas just answered no to him. Like,
That's
just
awesome.
Like completely just, what are you talking about? That's definitely not something we're going to do. So it didn't, like I said, it seemed more like a joke than anything.
Also, come on. They brought up the Chile stuff with Gus, and they haven't touched on it since. So they'll leave some loose ends. They
will, yeah.
Of them.
Yeah, and this one brings up Chile right here. Dub J, thank you for the 5. In Breaking Bad, Eladio said during Gus' flashback, he spared his life because he knew about his true past in Chile. Think it'd possibly be elaborated on still. We answered this earlier, Dub. I'm not sure if you were around, but we don't think so. That's the consensus. It's possible, but it's kind of hard to see how that would serve the bigger story of what's going on. And that little bit of mystery, like Jim just mentioned, it's nice to preserve some of that. It's nice to have some questions left in your head after the story wraps up, because then you keep thinking about it. Okay, I'm scrolling here. We didn't really talk about how much time you guys had. So if you need to,
I might bounce in a few minutes, partially because as people saw on the stream last night, and after another full day of traveling today, I'm sort of starting to run on fumes, but I'll give it a few more minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to stay till the end no matter what, and you're welcome to if you want, but if you have to get somewhere, I understand. What are you looking like, Jim?
I have a podcast to edit tonight, but I can do a little bit longer. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, just let me know, because I'm just sort of scrolling through the comments, and it takes up half of my attention. So if you need to, just let me know, and then we'll do our goodbyes. Seth Bunenkamper, that's an $8. That doesn't have a question. I'm just looking to see if there was something that followed that up, but thank you again for that. BRXH, thank you for the 199. What will the intros look like for episodes 11 to 13? I never saw a good I never saw a good theory about that. You guys understand this, I'm sure. Like, there was 10 episodes in every season. They used the same one every time. They degraded season over season because it's a VHS tape, that's being watched over and over again. So where do they go? I thought they could maybe do Better Call Saul commercials. I thought maybe that might be fun. You know what I mean? Like to do like a quick one that was a title credits. You guys have any ideas how they could replace the old ones with something new?
Just all static, like the tape's not even running anymore.
Or if the tapes have been degrading and now we've time skipped, have they introduced DVDs at this point? And so actually the quality will improve. We can get a weird melding. It's like a Breaking Bad / Better Call Saul, starting with the two songs are like mixed together. We'll find out.
Yeah. Seth Bunenkemper, thank you for the 5. I felt like Howard's wife was not a believable character. Excuse me. There are not many on Saul. Any others come to mind? Yeah, I don't know. You didn't really explain why you didn't think she was believable, so it's a little bit hard to say. I mentioned earlier I thought they did a great job of fleshing her out and making her feel like, I knew who she was. So I didn't share your opinion on that.
Who's the pill guy? Can't remember his name.
He's about guy.
Yeah, the guy who was selling the pills in earlier season.
Oh, Price. Daniel Wormald.
Yeah.
He's about as close as like an unrealistic character I can think of in this show, but it didn't bother me. Certainly, it was entertaining to watch.
Yeah, he's a little bit cartoony, like oblivious to a point where I could see it. It's stretching it a little bit, but he was such a delightful character. I really didn't mind it.
Right.
There was a thing going in, and it actually makes me think of another thing, but there was a thing on IMDb that said he was coming back. And I thought it was someone trolling because I was just like, how would they fit him into the story? And that did turn out to be the case, but we're watching this really serious episode with all these big answers and endings. And I'm still thinking in the back of my mind that Price might show up at any second. And that really, that says all I need to know about that character is, I agree with you guys. He is a little bit cartoony, but he owned my mind in the last episode, just thinking that he might come back. And that's saying something, and I just wanted to say, because I didn't bring it up in my video when I made it, but I'm watching the opening credits, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for this episode to come for the first time, watching on TV, and I saw Papa Varga's name in the credits, and man, that was the thing, like, whoa, why is he in this? They're not going to kill him after all that, are they? Like, that would be insane. So yeah, I thought that really kind of set the tone, because I was like, where the hell are they going to bring him back in? Like I just the actor's name, and I was just like, oh my God. And now I'm worried that they're going to be going after him in this episode.
I don't know, Pete. Do you remember on one of these live streams when people were asking about Nacho's father, and I said he might come back just so we can see Mike attempt to give him some closure?
I do remember that.
Remember that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you were on there, and like I remember when we talked about it at the time, I didn't think it was necessary, but I thought it would be good. And it's crazy that they actually, they turned it into something much bigger than that. Because Mike kind of gets it thrown in his face that, hey, you're not like me, like he did the honorable thing. And it doesn't change the fact that it was right, but his motivation and then his idea of justice, having that come back, it's a pretty substantial part. Like Papa Varga, beyond being the victim of losing the son, that's a pretty big contribution to the Breaking Bad universe when you think about it. Carl West, thank you for the £1.79. What was the happy ever after teaser? What was the happy ever after teaser addressed? The happy ending one, is that what I'm not sure.
There was one of those teasers where it was like a happy ending after all this or something like that.
Yeah, I made a video about that one. That's why I'm wondering if happy ever after is the same or not. I was just going to say you could go and look. I did a video because what stood out to me about that particular teaser is like, what does a happy ending even look like for these two anymore after Howard died? You know, like I want a happy ending for them, but I no longer know what that actually is because we were all in the moment of shock after Howard died as a result of their plan. You know. If you guys want to chime in on that, feel free. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to say.
Yeah, no, it gets you thinking. I mean, like you want a great show to do. It gets you to think about. People keep asking questions like, "Do they deserve a happy ending, or what do they deserve?" And it's a concept that you think about in real life, but at the same time, you kind of recognize there's no force in the universe. Or I guess I can't say that definitively, but at least I believe there's no supernatural force in the universe that ensures people get exactly what they deserve. So there's the question of, I guess, what do they need to do so they can be at peace and be happy? Do they need to take a certain amount of punishment? Do they need to do a certain amount of good in the world to balance the scales, like Mike kind of accused Gus of doing? So I think about it on two levels. One is what's going to happen in this story? What can I actually envision? But it does take you down an interesting path of, applying it to the real world. Just it gets you to think about those things.
Yeah, I thought that was what the brilliance of putting Lalo and Howard next to each other in the grave was. It's like on some levels, Howard did everything right. He went down, he brought himself back up, and it just shows you that the universe is in fact not fair.
I did one detail in that Howard scene that every time I talk about it, I mean to bring it up and I always forget to, which is that if he had left, a minute earlier, he would have been fine. And I think the last thing he says is basically, "I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to making sure everyone knows what frauds you are." And it's sort of like the moment he dipped his toe into that revenge, like, "I'm going to go down this path of destroying you two," Lalo shows up. So he didn't deserve it, but it almost, he kind of crossed that line a little bit.
Yeah, he's no angel, but he definitely didn't deserve what happened either. I like that twist there about thinking, especially after the last episode. I hadn't really considered that because he kind of feels justified in that, and you kind of feel like, yeah, I kind of hope you do get that.
Right.
I hope you do you expose them as frauds. But it is a change, and it is an actual change in the character. Danielle Infante, thank you for the $4.99. What does Kim leaving Jimmy and going away mean for Gus and Mike? Is there any reason for Gus to care about Kim and Jimmy now Lalo is dead? Yeah, there was a lot of people that had brought this up going in, and I even started to consider that maybe Gus, would want to, that he would look at them as knowing too much or whatever. I think by the fact that they added that line of him saying to Mike, "What about the lawyers?" I felt like that was, that was their saying like, "Hey, Gus doesn't care about this."
Yeah. I saw some people asking, Kim leaving Law would be a big red flag that might make people suspicious, and Mike or Gus wouldn't be too happy about that. But I think the main thing they wanted was for them to act natural up until Howard's death becomes public. And at this point, there's every reason for people to think people who are close to Howard would be rattled, and nobody would look at her quitting and say, "Wait a minute, could she have had something to do with this?" So I think they're safe, at least from that standpoint.
Yeah, it might even be more suspicious if they show up missing.
Right.
Negan the Cliffhanger, thank you for the $4.99. It's about STDs. How does this affect the storyline going forward? Well, it's between him and his sex workers, I guess, huh?
I was going to say the next question is the one I'm going to go out on, but I got to wait for the next one.
Yeah. When I was scrolling there, I lost it too. I had the next one. Here we go. Radio Chaos. Thank you for the Canadian 5. They could do Tuco's struggle as a drive-through cashier before he joins the cartel. How about this one, Gil? Is this the one you're going to go out on, or?
I guess we'll have to make it this one. But I will say that if they do a spinoff about Tuco as a drive-through cashier, that would tell me that Peter Gould, Vince Gilligan are probably not involved. This was AMC saying we got to get a spinoff, and I feel like they're gonna follow the money. And right now, everybody wants to see more Lyle. So I've seen people bandy about better dial Lyle. So I think that's a much more likely spinoff than this one.
Yeah, Gordon Smith said on the Insider podcast that they actually did write songs and scenes for a Lyle, a fictitious Lyle spinoff. Like they actually throw the idea around, and I forget what they said they called it, but it's a real thing.
Joke. It starts as a joke, but then they say, "Wait a minute, we may have something here."
I think they could do that. I mean, I think they could actually make a Lyle spinoff work. He's got a world of pain coming to him when he finds out that his hero is a meth kingpin.
I might accuse you of going the clickbait route if tomorrow I see a video from you that's how the Lyle spinoff could actually work.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm going to sign off here. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to bounce. But this was a lot of fun. I think hopefully for some of these last few, I'll be able to stick around and we can go 3 hours, or I assume as we get closer to the finale, there's going to be even more and more to talk about. So I'm excited for that. But thank you as always, Pete, for having me on, and Jim, great talking with you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and I'll check out his channel. I'll have links in the description for that and his podcast. So always good to have you on. We'll be back again next week, and like I said, I'm going to be doing Saturday, so if you want to, or if you're around, you can let me know and we can just throw everybody on there if need be. So
all right, awesome. I'll let you know. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Good way. See ya.
See ya.
I might also head out. It looks like all of your super chats from here on out are Lyle based. And if anybody's heard my podcast from last week, boy, your Lyle stuff, I don't know. I did a particularly harsh rant against Lyle, mostly because he was singing the Los Pollos theme song last episode.
Oh, that's right. I listened to that. Now I remember that you're not pro Lyle.
I'm very anti-Lyle, but it only happened. It was in the moment, man. I did not pre-plan any of that. I was just like, you know what? Lyle sucks, and here's why. And I laid it all out. So I don't know that I have a lot to comment on positively with Lyle.
Yeah. Hey, I get it. It's I just watched the show The Bear. I don't know if you watched that.
Oh, not yet. No.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it kind of I was kind of thinking of a Lyle spinoff whenever I was watching that, because it does this great thing where it focuses in on the job that they do, and it's like this weird group of people that are brought together, like every single job that everybody does like that in the entire world. You know what I mean? So it really kind of
scrub the grill.
Never for quite as long as what Lyle did, but I mean, it is an integral part of some of what they're doing there. So yeah, and I do recommend it if you check it out. It's a half an hour FX one. It's kind of like in that vein of Mr. In Between or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like a 30-minute drama, but I think there was 8 episodes, so you're only looking at like maybe 4.5, 5 hours, because a couple of them are extended, but it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool little show.
Yeah, it's one I've been meaning to get to.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on. It's great to see you. As always, you can come back whenever you want. Crazy that we only got a few more of these left.
I know, man.
And I've been listening to your For All Mankind stuff because I've been super sucked into that, and nobody really seems to care about it. So.
I know. It's a great show, though. Great show.
It really is. The 3rd season has been so much fun. I was going to send you guys an email saying that if you wanted to get together. I don't think I can really do a thing on here because it wouldn't get that many views, but
yeah.
And
that's a lot of work too. More. I know you put a ton of work into your videos. Yeah, if you want to come on the podcast and just chat sometime about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll hit you up on that. So, yeah. So you want to plug anything or whatever before you go? Just give these guys your
Yeah, if
spiel.
you're looking for another Better Call Saul podcast to listen to, Better Cast Saul, I do with my co-host Aaron over on baldmove.com, or Better Cast Saul in any favorite podcast app you have. That's where we're at.
Yep, I highly recommend it. I've been listening to their podcasts for years, and we talk TV all the time. So check it out for sure. You can find it in the description.
Cool. Thank you for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
All right, see ya. Have a good one. All right, now I'm gonna get through the rest of these super chats, and I'll stay as long as it takes. Almeida's Army, thank you for the 449 euro. Well, we see other big characters again. Eladio, Hector, Tuco, Chuck, Howard, flashback even characters that we haven't seen, like Emilio, Declan, Kubi, etc. There's a lot of people that you mentioned there. I felt like Eladio, Hector, I felt like that was kind of their end for Better Call Saul. I don't really see a good reason to bring them back. Tuco, we kind of skipped over when he got out of jail, so I think that's less likely than it was before. Chuck Howard flashback. I always like some Chuck, but yeah, it's 50-50, I would say. I feel like Howard is not as, I feel like if I had to choose between a Chuck and a Howard, I'd pick Chuck. Howard's still fresh in our memory. Chuck he's such a big part of shaping Jimmy into the person that he is. I think that would be, fantastic. But I've also heard them say, like, that they don't want to use that too much. I mean, when you have Michael McKean available and you can do that, there's probably, there's probably an impulse to, like, let's do that every season or every chance we can get, and they have to kind of hold off on that. Emilio, Declan, Kubi. I mean, Kubi was always made sense because him and Huel are together and they're a pretty big part of what's going on. He made sense in the BCS timeline, but they couldn't make that work in season 5. They used Mr. X instead because Bill Burr wasn't available. I don't really care about Declan or Emilio unless it's about tying the others in, like we'll see though. We'll see. John Latkowski, thank you for the 5. Is there any chance that Kim becomes a reinvented version of herself and is actually the character that she's currently playing in Cooper's bar? I only watched the first episode of that, but I didn't see any real connection there. And so, no, I that wouldn't be my guess. I think that's the way that they're going, but I think that she will reinvent herself. She's not going to be a lawyer, and she probably has a decent amount of savings from her time working with Mesa Verde, but she's going to have to do something, and she doesn't have the getting placed like Jean did, like to become a whole new person like that. She's going to have to do, build something of her own. Seth Burner Kemper. Sorry, I mess it up every time. $35. That is very generous. Thank you very much. Ice Station Zebra, the Diamonds, the call in season 4 flash forward with Francesca. Are these needed to be addressed? I would say Ice Station Zebra, not necessarily. They laid they laid the groundwork of why he would name it that, whether Kim's involved or not. That was always the big question about that. Is it called that because Kim's involved with that? I feel like that's less likely now, and I still feel like it makes sense that he would name that because he had this check that was made out to Ice Station Zebra hanging on the mirror of their room for a couple of seasons there. So it's not like something that he would forget. Yeah, I think the diamonds, it would be nice to figure out where he gets those, but maybe it just kind of makes sense in that, he's got this opulent lifestyle that we didn't know about before. in the McMansion. So I think it would be cool. I feel like those will probably play a part in the end. They wouldn't have introduced them if they they weren't planning on doing something with that. When I made my teaser breakdown about that call where he tells him to, tell someone on the other line to leave him alone, that they're not friends. I thought maybe he might be paying off Jeff, and that might come into it there. We talked about the call with Francesca earlier. I do believe that we'll find out what's up with that. I mean, if any of it, they don't need to if it doesn't serve the story. I don't think they should suffer. I don't think they should, take away from what's working just because they want to stick something in there. But it's nice when they can tie off all those loose ends. Hans Scherler, thank you for the $2. Do we have closure on the fish tank? I don't think so. I do kind of wonder if they move out where it went. It's not shown up in the mansion as far as I know. We don't see it as office ever. Maybe we'll see something else with that in the future. I saw that they were cleaning the blood spatter off of that in the last episode, so hopefully the fish isn't too traumatized from that. Bax, thank you for the 5. It's been rumored that they lost Saul's watch in Breaking Bad and replaced it. What do you think of them now giving Jimmy and Lalo the same watch? Oh man, I don't even know anything about what you're talking about here. They lost Saul. So you're saying like the production company lost Saul's wife or Saul watch? This isn't the story I ever heard of, and I didn't realize that Jimmy and Lalo had the same one either. So I'm sorry. I don't have anything that I can say about that. Made in Brooklyn, 1975. Thank you for the 10. Am I wrong for thinking that neither Kim nor Jimmy ever express any remorse for the role they played in Howard's death or the destruction of his reputation even after his death? Yeah, I would say you're wrong. I'd say that Kim breaking up with Jimmy expresses that pretty explicitly. And the way that she said that we hurt people around us and bad things happen because we come together. And because I believe that and I feel bad about everything that happened, I need to leave. I need to end this relationship. I mean, that was my take on it. And it makes sense to me. So I don't really, I mean, I don't know what you mean by express beyond like saying it out loud there. I feel like that's pretty explicit. They haven't gotten in trouble for it yet, and that would come in if he ends up turning himself in at the end. Washed Up 84, thank you for the 5. I don't get Mike and Gus's relationship from BCS to BB now. And BCS, Mike has messed up stuff for Gus, and he also doesn't seem to like Gus. Well, I don't think they're friends, and I don't think they ever were friends in Breaking Bad either. And I do sort of see where you're coming from. Tyrus was in this last season, especially Tyrus was kind of at the top of the food chain, and Mike was clearly under him, where in Breaking Bad that seems to be have switched. I guess they could explain that to us. I don't, but I just feel like we also know Mike is a really valuable guy, and he's the kind of guy that would work his way up. So I don't think they need to. And I just don't think, I don't think he has respect for Gus. I think that's pretty clear, like he has his reasons for working with him because he knows he's good at it, and it's the hand that he's been dealt. He's playing the hand that he's been dealt, but I don't think he'll ever have any, he'll ever feel good about what Gus does or that he's a part of it, for that matter. Blue Stomiv, thank you for the 2. I'm disappointed. Wanted to see how Saul got the caddy. That's fair. It's not a it's not something that is bothering me. I mean, to me, it seems like this gave us a little bit more information. Like, there was a time when people thought that this might be a gift from the cartel or something like that. I mean, now we know that he probably just bought it off the lot, and it's just a part of everything else that he has going on there in this crazy lifestyle he has. Like, and when you saw that from things in the perspective of Breaking Bad, you didn't really know if Jimmy or Saul, that was actually thriving. He was really kind of insistent that they continue to cook meth and keep that going. So, like, there was always the possibility that he wasn't really doing that well. Now we know he's actually kind of loaded. So he's doing it for fun and, for the coping mechanism. Space King, $2. Let's get Gilligold, Gilligould, Gillico, or Goat trending. Go for it, man. Let's do it. Let's see here. AB, thank you for the $4.99. What's up with the new teaser? A robbery, a commercial shoot, a robbery disguised as a commercial shoot? Don't know what to expect from Gene. Yeah, I was talking to Kiwi about this yesterday, like after the episode. We were talking about the episode, and then he asked me, and I only watched it the one time, like I watched it at the end of the episode, and then I went straight into, you know, getting ready to make my recap. So my initial take, without looking at it very closely, was that it was probably Gene. He was doing something at the mall to create a commotion. Like it sounded like he was talking over the PA as far as I could tell, and that he was like telling people to, take stuff, like, trying to just trying to get something chaotic to pop off. And obviously that would be to his advantage, but that's as far as I could go with it. I mean, there's not really much else. So those teasers are really good in that way, that they're just, it hints at there's chaos to come, but we're not really sure how that's going to play out or even when. Tristy, thank you for the 5. Kim swearing in could be reflection to Howard or to a new or re-swearing into Florida or New Mexico bar. Yeah, I know that there is a thing out there. There's a photo, and that's led a lot of people to believe that there is Florida in her future. This is something I never really looked into it. I got it spoiled for me a couple of times, and I never really knew what the providence of it was, or if it was reliable. So I just don't really talk about it or try to think about it, because I want to see it organically in the show. But yeah, that one teaser, I thought the same thing, that she could go to a different state and become a lawyer. But now, I mean, she would have to there would have to be something in her story that changes, because right now she feels like she shouldn't be able to practice law. Like, it's something that she's chosen, that she doesn't think it's the right thing for her. So something would have to happen to make her change her mind. I'm not seeing any more here, but there has to be, because I see some at the top. So I apologize for the time in the scrolling. All right, here we go. Ed His Hands again. Thank you for the $4.99. Gene asked him to turn him in. He pleads guilty. She gets the $5 million to start her pro bono practice, and that would explain her getting sworn in again. I mean, yeah. There's definitely some dots to connect to make that possible. I see where you're coming from, and how that could make sense. But there's also this, there's this thing where, he's being pressured by Jeff. So if he's been in Omaha for a while, then we have to imagine that he's not in touch with her for a while too. So we'll see. All right. Claudette Garrity. Thank you for the 1999. Where does Kim go? Great question. As that last a couple of questions ago, there is a idea that she may end up in Florida. A lot of people ever since Jean showed up in Omaha have been saying that she'd go back to Omaha, but I never really liked that idea because she ran away from there as a choice, and there was nothing really for her to go back for that we know of. I mean, obviously, I don't know. It just never seemed like the character would go back to where she came from, that she left on purpose. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really seem to be any nostalgia or connections there that she's missing out on not being there. So I think the correct answer to this question based on what we know is that she could go anywhere. And it'll be exciting to see where she decides to go and how how it is. I did think earlier when we were talking about the phone call and the idea of only once a year, that I do think that she'll want to keep that a secret from Jimmy because, you can't really imagine that he he will he would he would be able to control himself and turn that off or go to the extreme of being this much of a Saul if there was a possibility that he could get back together. Hmm. All right. Mir Kamo. Thank you for the 5. Usually the crew makes a shirt paying tribute to the character leaving dying. And they guest on the podcast, not this time with Kim. Yeah, I did notice that. I was expecting to hear Ray, and then it was interesting because they didn't have Ann Cherkis on there either. And they mentioned that towards the end of the Insider podcast that she wasn't available because of COVID. And so that might be something to think about why they didn't do it that way. But like, yeah, I never felt like I thought this was a great ending for the relationship, but not the character. I thought that I thought that it was a pretty perfect way to pop her out of the immediate story and then transition into Saul. But I mean, come on, it didn't feel like the last time we'd ever see her. And part of that is cope. Like I want more, but I think it's legitimately, there's more to see. And just to play devil's advocate on what you're saying, the other two characters you're talking about did die, and she didn't. So that could be a different explanation for that. Dan, thank you for the 4.99. Is there a chance Kim still dies or shows up in present time when Saul is hiding? Definitely that she shows up. I think that is baked in, and that's almost like they almost have, if she doesn't show up in the Gene timeline, then then they have to explain why that didn't happen almost, because it's just so essential to the character, like he could turn himself in because he knows that she's never coming back, like something happens, but I don't think it would be that she dies. It would be really tricky to if they don't follow her on her own story and then just to have her die abruptly if they brought her back or off screen even. I mean, that seems pretty unsatisfying for that character. Rod Kiefer, thank you for the 199. Could Saul's "I'm not your friend" call be with Kim? I don't think so. I mean, to be honest, I never liked that in the first place, so there's some bias there, but um it just, yeah, I mean, she'd have to really be turning it on, just to keep him away, because I mean, she exposed her feelings for what they were in the last episode. I don't have any reason to believe that she was being dishonest there. So, I don't know what I feel like Saul could understand that even if he's acting the way that he's acting. So I don't know why he would be cruel. The Bustum, thank you for the MX20. Have you seen the date on the disabled tag 11/20/08? I'm not sure. I thought that I read that it was not in '08. You're confusing me. Do you have any way that I can't really look at it right at this moment because I'm in here alone and there's a bunch of other questions, but my understanding from looking into that this morning was that there was nothing to contradict the 2005 timeline that people were thinking that this was. I will go and look at it afterwards, though. But I mean, I can't do it in the middle of the stream, unfortunately. Game Like a Dylan, thank you for the $4.99. The first scenes of the series showed us Jimmy trying to hold on to the memories of Saul. Then we thought nostalgia. Now we see it as a need to forget. Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier. And this, I get the idea that this is probably, you probably posted that before or maybe at the same time. And I absolutely agree. I love, that's the one thing about this episode that elevates it even. I mean, there was a lot to like about it, and there's a lot that would make it my, one of my favorites. And maybe when the recency wears off, it'll slip down from number one. But that was one of the things that really contributed to that, was just the amazement that they could recontextualize some of these things in a surprising and satisfying way this late in the game. Pablo Osuna, thank you for the $4.99. The cliffhanger will be Lyle officially taking over as the head of New Empire with Skinny and Badger as the new cooks. Maybe. Maybe. El Jushi, thank you for the $1.99. Does Saul still have his yeah, okay. Thanks for contributing to the conversation, asking the important questions. Nick Lemke, thank you for $4.99. The gap is bridged between Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So, are there any alternate scenarios you wanted to see? I think Lalo running the show in Breaking Bad would be great. You confused me with that last part there. The gap is bridged. So, are there any alternate scenarios that you wanted to see? No, I don't know. I never liked the idea of Lalo still being around, just because I didn't think Gus' character made any sense in that. I mean, I liked the Lalo character. I think he was awesome, and of course, it would be great to have more time with him. But story wise, I didn't think it made sense. I thought that Gus had to slay that dragon before he could become the character we knew. Alternate theories, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the way things played out. Like, I never liked the idea of Kim being around in the background. That seemed a little too cute for what it was, and the fact that they, brought it up from the beginning that Kim is not around in Breaking Bad. Like, it would have been, I don't know, like, just not very tasteful to do that. I can't think of any alternate scenarios. I'm sorry, Nick Lemke. If something comes to mind in the next few minutes, I'll circle back around. Hmm. Ben Landis, thank you for the $1.99. What are some ways they could screw up the ending? Well, I mean, that's a big question. It all depends on how it hits. Like, I don't think that it's hard to imagine. There was a funny thread because there was a bunch of those going around to make up the worst ending, and pretty much all the shows that I follow on Reddit, that was a trend this week, and there are some great ones in there, but they're all funny. They're not supposed to be serious, so I don't know. I mean, if Jimmy, if Jimmy doesn't redeem himself, that wouldn't necessarily be terrible. But if they just kind of went out with, like, I don't know, if they just went out with straight, with nothing to get us out of this sad place that they kind of put us in, because, like, like I was talking to my guest earlier, like it really the series rewatching Breaking Bad just got a lot sadder. You know what I mean? Like that's a real thing that happened with Mike's character, Gus's character, and definitely Saul's character. So they could screw up the ending a little bit if they didn't do that for a reason. I know it's kind of vague, but that's the kind of way that I'm thinking about it. Leonardo Hernandez, thank you for the 2. How about the Salamancas are not after Papa Varga? Yeah, I think in a kind of like a sly way they kind of address that. And this has always been my thought because people that people thought that that the Nacho's ending wasn't good because they couldn't confirm that he would be safe, his father would be safe. And I thought that went against, what they were doing. And that, the thing about that you have to remember about the cartel is that Hector is a bad dude, but he can't do anything if Eladio doesn't give him permission. Like that's really important for Eladio to hold on to his power, that he has to enforce that. And they showed that, and how Lalo was so meticulous this season to fake his death, and then go after this proof before he actually moved on Gus, even though he knew his suspicions about Gus were true. So they for them to go after his family, they'd have to get that from Eladio. And what does he care about their personal grudges? You know what I mean? Like I think they did a pretty good job of showing that in this last episode, that Eladio just wants the business to run. So if they go around killing random people that aren't in the game, then that's just bad business. Jarkaris bitch, thank you for the 4.99. Walt scene will be him giving Saul the juice to give to Brock, since Saul was delivering cash to Andrea frequently. It has to be a crucial scene to Breaking Bad, and I would disagree with you there. I don't think it has to be a crucial scene to Breaking Bad. I think it has to be a crucial scene to the story of Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman. I don't think this show is at its core there to further expand on the story of Breaking Bad. I think it's they've tried to make it a standalone thing. It's great when it does that. I'm not against it when that happens, but I just don't think that's necessary in figuring out. However, I do agree that is a possible place where they could bring them back, except for I expect them to be together. I expect Walt and Jesse to be together when we see them. So that's something to keep in mind too, because obviously, they have a lot of the stuff, a lot of the time in that timeline, they're not they're not getting along. At times, Walt is trying to get rid of Jesse. David Roberts, thank you for the $2. What about a Frank Abagnale ending for Jimmy? And you're gonna make me Google, aren't you? The name is familiar, but I can't. I'm blanking it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar. It's too difficult for me to look that up. I'll look into it after the stream's over, I promise. Okay, sorry there. Mr. G, thanks you for the 5 again. So Saul beat D.A. Erickson's investigation, or maybe she dropped it. Kim leaving the profession would have been suspicious, right? Gene plus Kim will happen. Yeah, I've we talked about. I definitely think that Kim and Gene they're going to cross paths. The Erickson thing, Yeah, I guess I don't know if you've watched the short, what's the show that American Greed that they did. She shows up in that, and maybe part of the reason why they did what that was sort of tie that together because um you know they never really circle back to it. But I mean, did she really have an investigation, or did she just have suspicions and she wanted to pick up an investigation if she had someone to work with? It's interesting, but I don't have a great answer for it. Darkgate 33, thank you for the $10. Hello, I don't know if this was asked earlier, but the time skip between the breakup and Jimmy waking up from his bed felt like a long time. What's your opinion? Love the stream. Yeah, it seems the consensus is 2005, so maybe 1 year after when Kim left, possibly longer. I mean, Breaking Bad, the actual Breaking Bad timeline is 2008. That's when they first show up, but he shows up in season 2 for the first time. But based on contextual clues, it seems like they're in 2005. So there's still a gap of time between what we saw there at the end of this episode and when Breaking Bad starts. Alrighty. Brody, thank you for the $2. Any idea what the next episode title could mean? Nippy. It's funny because I've been asking people this in behind the scenes talking, and I really like the idea of them changing now that it's not Kim and Jimmy anymore, not having the ands anymore. That it's just one words now because everybody's alone. And the only thing that I had, I think Gil said this organically on his own in the last stream. Nippy. It made me think of the cold, and Gene is in the snow in the last couple of Gene episodes that we or installments that we've seen. So that's what it thought about. I just thought of loneliness and cold, and it's a bit nippy outside because of where he's at compared to where he was before. Other than that, I got nothing. I mean, it's a goofy title. Kiwi, especially, he didn't want to believe that it existed, that it was real, because he just hated the word that they were using there. Hassan Faid, thank you for the 5. Would the end of episode 9 be the point when Saul meets Badger due to the comment on the public masturbation? Yeah, this we were talking about this before, and I don't think so. I think I think Jim put it pretty well when he said, this is kind of showing that this is what he's been doing for, this is the kind of stuff he does all the time. He gets these kind of cases all the time. No, 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 no. Let's see what's next. Bax, thank you for the 5. New Mexico handicap tags only have the expiration date on the tag and are only issued for a period of 1 to 4 years. It's not '08 if the tag says '08. Okay, so maybe that's what this is talking about what I was saying earlier. I didn't look into it myself, but I looked into the idea of it over on Reddit, and yeah, maybe that's correct if it's the expiration, not the year it was issued. Thanks for that. Paul Savazlin, thank you for the $6.99 Canadian. What do you think happened with Gus at the bar? Just catching himself from showing his true orientation, or realizes that Papa Varga is a loose end? I would say neither. I think that my take on it was that he's consumed by revenge, and that was what Papa was talking about, that it never ends. So I think there's a good tie in there, and I think it's just him saying like, I think he imagined it. You know, he had the bottle, he had the opening to bring this guy into his world. And I think he allowed himself to have the fantasy, but he won't allow himself to have that, those things that regular people have. I mean, there's the obvious thing that he doesn't, he he's so focused, he's so single-minded that he has to focus on that, his business, his getting himself to the place where he can kill everyone in the cartel, which is what's important to him. But there's also the thing of like maybe he likes this guy and he's thinking about it of like in the way that Kim is thinking about that she can't be with Jimmy, that if he brings this guy into his life, then there's a chance that this guy might get killed as a result. One of his enemies could find out, go after him. He could just be collateral damage, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of things, but I think it's really all about Gus and his choice that this revenge against the cartel and the Salamancas is all he'll allow himself, and not really about the guy himself or about, his orientation or anything like that. Isan Punda, thank you for the 449. How does this tie into Jesse and Walt? Can we get some better understanding of Walt's relationship with gray matter or Jesse and Walt in high school? I think that now that we've moved forward in the timeline, that those kinds of things are less likely. I think that we're going to see something that happens during, 2008 timeline, and it'll be the way that we saw it, the way we saw what Saul was doing or how it affects Saul, like we maybe misinterpreted it originally. And that's what we'll see here is that we'll see it from a different, we'll see it differently, just sort of like how we see so many things differently out of this episode. Well, after we see whatever their thing is, we'll see some of the stuff that he does differently going forward. Kevin Fatinol, thank you for the 5. Do you think the ending should be happy or naturalistic? I personally think the latter, just like Breaking Bad. Mm, I don't I don't know. I mean, it'll depend a little bit on what they have to do to get there, the price that they pay for it, I guess is a way you could say it. I don't think that we can expect something to be purely happy for anybody, but I would like to see it, you know, I'd like to know, since we spent so much time getting to know Jimmy McGill and knowing the tragedy of that, the good stuff that was in there getting removed from his life, by circumstance and by the choices that he made. I just like to see that, at the end of the day, he's moving more towards being that person again rather than continuing to do what he's doing. Space King, thank you for the 2. License plate says 05. Handicap says 08 confirmed. And yeah, I think, what that last person said was, it could be the expiration date. So it's all interesting, but I still think it's 2005. Random YouTube commenter. Thank you for the R5. I wonder if they'll show 1, Saul helping Emilio, 2, Tuco getting out of prison and taking Hector to his house, and 3, Crazy 8 becoming an informant. They already showed Crazy 8 becoming an informant, so I don't think they need to do that anymore. Don't really care about seeing Tuco or Hector. I really like the ending they gave us for Hector there, and we know Tuco comes back. We can fill in those blanks if we need to. Saul helping Emilio, that feels a little throwaway at this point. It's a nice little dot that they could connect if they wanted to, but not really essential. I mean, like I said, Breaking Bad is already good. They don't need they don't really need to lay groundwork in for the people that are transitioning to like it better. You know what I mean? So it should be character based around the people that we know from BCS, in my opinion. MB, thank you for the 5. Do you think it's possible that there will be a Jesse appearance present day, or do you think they will leave that story alone? Love the channel. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I feel like they don't. I think I like thinking of Jesse doing his best up there in Alaska, trying to make his way, and don't really know how him coming back in contact with Saul Goodman would improve upon that. So yeah, I'd like to see him in the Breaking Bad timeline instead. That'd be my personal choice. But this a lot of the times when you think about these hypotheticals, a lot of stuff that sounds terrible, these are the people that might be able to pull it off at the same time. So you know what I mean? It's not like when I say I don't prefer something or don't like something, it doesn't mean that I don't think they could pull it off if they wanted to. Alexander Kepchar, thank you for the 4.99. What did Kim mean by mentioning we break up in breakup scene? As in the only thing holding them together at that point was their scam, if not true love. I feel like I wanted to talk about this with the other guys earlier when they were here, and it never came up. So thank you for the question. I wish I would have seen it a little bit earlier, but I don't know that it's 100% that we're like. I don't. My take is that there's a little bit of ambiguity there. On the one hand, we saw her make that U-turn to where that made it clear that her top priority at that time was that scam. And so if Jimmy there's an implication that if Jimmy wasn't going to continue on that, then they could actually have a breakup because of that. You know what I mean? Because that's where she was. But there's also other stuff, you know what I mean? Like, when he said, "Am I bad for you?" That's when that's where she got the idea to do this, to bring him up. And then she got more taken by it than he did, And so, yeah, I don't know. That it's something that I'm going to be looking at. I haven't got a chance to read all the different reviews and articles on this yet, and I'll be doing that over the next couple of days. And that's one of the things I'm looking for, because I'm sure there'll be some new Ray interviews where maybe she touches on that a little bit, but we'll see. Dracaris bitch, thank you for the 4.99. Jimmy will end up in prison, only fitting ending as he's a criminal lawyer, and he'd be the only character in the Breaking Bad universe to end up in jail. I agree with what you're saying there, that it would be a different ending that we haven't seen yet. And he, as far as we know, that there's a big bounty for him out there, and it's definitely a possibility. If it happens, I like it, him turning himself in rather than being caught. But I also would like to watch him do something crazy that might get him caught, if that's, if they can make that work. What I mentioned earlier, with the other guys, is I don't what I like less is this idea that we see him in prison, or we see his court, and we see how that plays out, and we get reassured that, hey, you know what? Good old Jimmy will be all right in prison because he's got the right skills to make friends in there, and he can, we can be a jailhouse lawyer. I would like to leave all that up for question, if we could. Bax, thank you for the 5 again. Will Walt meet Gene? No. That's my take. I'll be. Someone asked earlier what could ruin the series, and I think like that could be something that might be able to ruin the series for me if they brought Walt into the Gene timeline. That this seems like a terrible idea to me, because for one, the the disappearer isn't what he advertised himself to be. If Walt can find Gene. You know what I mean? Like Gene should be completely off the radar. And Gould said that the American Greed segment is concurrent with Gene. In the segment, Walt is still missing, not dead. I didn't know that. Man, I hope not, but we'll see. I watched the American Greed and I thought that was great, but I didn't catch that that it left the door open for those timelines to overlap. Oh, I think we got to the end, folks. It does appear to be the end, and I've definitely run out of steam. If you have a last second question, now would be the time to ask it, because I will be signing off momentarily. So yeah, like I said, Saturday we're gonna do one maybe a little bit earlier, but around the same time, Saturday night. Courtney and Kiwi will both be there for sure. Neither one of them can make it today, so give us a chance to talk about a little bit of revisiting this stuff after we had some time to think about it, but more about what comes next, and answer all your questions also. Next week we'll be back on Tuesday night. We'll see, how the Saturday goes, but it might be 2 for a while. And as long as you guys show up, I'll keep doing them. And I want to thank you guys for all the questions and sticking around for 3 hours and 10 minutes. Check out my recap if you haven't seen it yet. I've got some more stuff coming out this week, so keep an eye out. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.